speaker, and all comments, questions are passed or made to the presiding officer. I want us to kind of abide by that tonight a little bit closer, and I'm going to start enforcing a little bit of that stuff a little bit more so as well. And I will call the regular meeting to order, and I will recognize Councilman Waits to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance and the invocation.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Heavenly Father, be with us tonight, not just me. We live in a me world, it seems, but be here with us while we discuss things influencing our town, things that we need to get straightened out in this town. Please continue to look out for our country, those who serve our country, those who serve us in our town government, our police officers, our firemen, first responders. We ask these blessings in your Son's precious name. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Next item on the agenda is the reading of the minutes from July 16th, 2019. Is there a motion for approval?
Make a motion.
And a second.
Second.
Any discussion, comments, or amendments? I did see one on page 2, presentation by citizens, agenda items, Barbara Walters. That's actually supposed to be Barbara Waldman. She was also Waldman, the lady that spoke during the public hearing as well.
Oh.
Any other? All in favor of the minutes for July 16th being approved as amended with that one change, do so with a show of hands. And the next is for July 25th. Is there a motion for approval?
I make a motion.
And a second.
Second.
Any discussion, amendments? Seeing none, all in favor of those minutes being approved as read, do so show of hands. And next is the administrative briefing. Mr. Brown, anything you want to add?
No, sir.
Any questions of Mr. Brown on the briefing? Seeing none, next is amendments to the agenda. Any amendments to the agenda?
Yes, Mayor, I have an amendment. I'd like to suspend the rules and take item J out of order under unfinished business before item B.
All right, there's a motion to suspend the rules. Let's see where we're at. And take item J out of order. Is there a second?
Second.
Huh?
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, the reason why I wanted to do that is to discuss this request to have a traffic study done, a traffic impact study done before we vote on third and final reading of the ordinance 1913 of rezoning that property at Carlisle Street. Just to have the discussion, if it's before we vote on third and final reading. If it's not approved, then it's not approved, but if it is, then we know what we can't go forward on the third and final reading.
And Kathy, I think you second.
I don't know that we do traffic studies, but it's a congested area. But my whole thought is there are a lot of ways in and out of there, at least 4 out.
Of that property?
of that from that,
Well, she's got the floor.
yeah, and we can discuss it, but
Right.
I think it's more accessible and, more egress and ingress than a lot of business properties. But anyway,
Okay.
Anyone else?
I agree with Kathy. There are 4 ways into that property. That section had 5 businesses at one time, one being a dry cleaners that, based on what the person who is going to develop the property said, it's going to involve some removal of toxic chemicals that are in the soil behind where the dry cleaners was. He's going to replace 5 businesses with 2. And instead of having just Lake Murray access and egress, there'll be 4 ways. That's the purpose of changing the zoning, because that house that's going to be torn down behind it is now going to be zoned general commercial. And I have a question. If we do require a traffic study, who pays for the traffic study? I don't know. That's why I'm asking. I wouldn't think the person who's developing this property ought to be responsible for doing that. If he's cutting down the number of businesses in there, improving the entrances and the exits by buying the almost whole block of property. And in the town, I hope we wouldn't have to pay for it. Just sell the piece of property.
And those are all things we should be discussing in that actual motion.
Right.
Now, we should be only discussing whether we want to suspend the rules and move it. I think there's a lot of stuff that needs to be discussed in there, like you say, who's going to pay for it. And also, after it's done, what difference does it make? We have no requirements on requiring anybody to meet any kind of traffic guidelines. So before we'd ever do a traffic study, you need an ordinance that says what the results of that and what's, the justification. Requiring
Mr. Mayor, point of order, Mr.
I got
Mayor.
the floor.
Point of order.
Right.
We're talking about amendments to the agenda, not to the actual ordinance.
Well,
Can we vote on the amendment to the agenda, please?
I'm going to finish saying, since everybody else has said what they wanted to say too. There are a lot of questions that we need to discuss, and like I said, there's no, regardless if you do a traffic study, there's nothing that's going to be done after it's all said and done. Put it on a shelf and walk away from it. But yeah, I think we can vote yeah or nay. You want to?
No.
All in favor of suspending the rules and moving J up, do so with show of hands. All opposed? Next is considerations of communications. We have Brian Pena here to speak to us about an idea he has. And, oh, there you go. If you'd like to come to the podium.
Mayor and Council, thank you all so much for hosting me again. I was here about a month ago, and we were very fortunate to honor Al Karst, a longtime Irmo citizen. And in the process, we organized, reaching back to 1971, we were able to gather every single Irmo police chief, Chief Cox, Chief Leapart, Chief Cameron, Chief Nash, Chief Byrd, Chief Murphy, Chief Howard, Chief Graham, Chief Blackwell, Chief Buck, Chief Nates, Chief Perry, as well as the sheriff, and 3 of the mayors of Irmo, Mayor Lovett, Mayor King, and Mayor Lyon. Before I go into it, I'd like to request, I've gifted each one of the police chiefs and each one of the mayors one of these, and now I'd like to officially gift the town of Irmo, if I may come forward. This is a picture of all of the Irmo police chiefs, mayors, and the sheriff of that town, which I think is truly a treasure for the town of Irmo for years to come.
Oh, missed a good presentation.
Nice.
And somebody asked me not too long ago why I did that. And quite simply, I grew up in Irmo. I have a business in West Columbia now. I live in Lexington, but I grew up in Irmo since the late 80s, mid-80s, when my father moved down here. I love Irmo. My mother still lives here to this day. She lives in Hill Creek. She's 84 years old and will likely live here for the rest of her life. So I'm here in Irmo at least 2 or 3 times a week. The main reason why I'm here, and I don't even know where to begin, I've spoken to my attorney. I've got a couple options. But more than anything, I've got my wife's blessing to move forward. And if you guys are married, you know that probably trumps just about every other blessing that you can have. In the early 1980s, Irmo Police, and I've developed a great friendship with one of the chiefs back then, Ray Nash. I was down in Florida with him just a couple days ago. They put Irmo on the law enforcement map, so to speak, in the state of South Carolina by driving Volkswagen Rabbits. And I have, bless Renee's heart, I've spent a lot of time at town hall the past few weeks, probably making her want to pull her hair out. I've dug through every council minute meeting of the 80s. I've heard the story from Chief Cameron that bought the Volkswagen Rabbits in his own home. He let me in his house. I sat at his dining table. All the minutes that are printed in my truck right now, she's gracious enough to print them, verifying all the stories about I wouldn't say the arguments, but back and forth with Sheriff Powell back then about how Richland County couldn't afford to put fuel in their cars. And they even made a commercial with one of the officers sitting there eating a carrot, making fun of the rabbits that we had. And Chief Cameron was cruising all over Irmo with the rabbits. So to make a long story short, what I want to do, and again, from my love of Irmo, my love of vehicles, I'm at a place in my life that I'm blessed that I can do this. Chief Nash and I, with her help and a bunch of other people's help, we've been trying to locate, now don't laugh at first, trying to locate one of the 3 original Volkswagen Rabbits from Irmo. There was, number 1 was a silver one Chief Cameron drove. There was 2 and 3 were white Rabbits that Ray Nash and future Chief David Byrd drove for a while. We haven't come up with the exact VIN numbers yet. I know where they were sold. I've talked to the people, the families, they've passed away. I'm still working on finding those. But if not, I want to purchase, my family wants to purchase on our own dime, a replica, kind of like if you go to Gatlinburg, Tennessee, you see the Dukes of Hazzard cars and the Sheriff Coltrane drove the police cars. We are working to get and to restore one of the original Irmo Volkswagen Rabbits. And if you think that's crazy, I would probably agree with you. But it's a beautiful gesture, I think, of community and for future generations to kind of know what Irmo was. I can think of no other thing off the top of my head, visual or something that you can hold, I'm at a loss for words, that represents that time period in Irmo more than the Volkswagen Rabbits. So what we want to do is one of 2 things, and I've talked to my attorney with a couple different options, and whatever y'all decide, we don't have to decide tonight. We either want to restore it totally, we'll pay for every dime of it to get it restored, from the stickers to the car to the motor to the light bar that we're still looking for, and we want to donate it to the town of Irmo. Or if you guys are not comfortable with that, because there would be some cost that comes with that, maintenance over the years, insurance, yada yada, I'm going to restore it and I'm going to use it in front of my business as a talking piece that I would potentially and conceivably gift to you guys to use as I spoke to the mayor the other day for Okra Strut, for different community events throughout the year. Financially, the only thing that I'm looking at that may conceivably cost Irmo any money would be insurance and future maintenance on a vehicle like that. I've got a timeline of about a year to make this happen. I've given myself a timeline to find the perfect vehicle. If we don't find the VIN numbers on the original, restore it. And that's just where I'm at. And I wanted to ask y'all's blessing to proceed with it with one of those 2 options, to either donate it to the town of Irmo free and clear, or I'll donate it to my business. It'll become a write-off for us, and you guys are more than welcome to use it down the road. But I'd love to see it just bopping around town. I would love to see it parked out front of town hall. I'd love to see some of the older generations telling some of the younger generations what life was like back here in those days. Can I entertain any questions or any thoughts? I'm going to leave this with you guys, and I'll pick it up maybe one day next week. This is a story of the Volkswagen Rabbit. So only to my knowledge, 3 departments across the United States used a Volkswagen Rabbit as a patrol car. It was not endorsed by Michigan or California. I don't know who does all the endorsements for the patrol vehicles. Chief Cameron just went back then to Nick's Volkswagen, that was off Beltline Boulevard, and bought 3 after a contentious debate with town council that I've got documented. But he went and he won. He came back a couple months after they were bought, and he showed the numbers of the gas mileage savings, of this, that, and the other. And at the end of the day, everyone on council was his fan for that. So I'm going to leave this over here on the table in just a minute for y'all to look at. It tells a little history on how they were used. Call me crazy, and that's cool. My wife does every day. Do y'all have any questions or can entertain any thoughts? Those are the two options that I'm looking at.
Are these diesel rabbits or are they
Those
gas?
are no, so those are the baseline rabbits. They had 3 different versions, I believe, at that point. They had the base one, then they had the L one, which was a little bit more luxurious, and then they had the diesel rabbit. Okay. These were gas rabbits. The only difference, and I've talked to Chief Nash, and he agrees, if we cannot find the originals were 5-speed. He recommended maybe doing an automatic so more people nowadays could drive it. Other than that, it would be. I own a 63 Ford that has the 3 on the tree transmission. Oh, yeah. And my wife jokes that we could park it anywhere. Nobody will steal it because nobody can drive it anymore.
Nobody can drive it.
Little bit by little bit, nobody can drive those vehicles anymore. But Chief Nash would tell me how they would be flying through Friars Gate. Those cars were just so much more agile for the roads that Irmo has. The car they had before then was a Plymouth, I don't remember, it got about 8 miles to the gallon, Irmo police had. The Volkswagen Rabbit came back and was documented in the minutes, I think got like 23, 27 miles to the gallon. So I could keep y'all all night talking about it. I love the history. I've met all the chiefs. A lot of them have gifted me different things over time that I have. I've got a whole section of my business dedicated to Irmo. Again, can I entertain any questions, or do you guys have any thoughts or anything before I'm done?
Thank you.
No.
If y'all could just consider that, I'd like to return in a few months when we have something figured out in stone and get your blessing either way if y'all want to think about that, whether we donate it or whether I keep it in front of my business.
How cool.
You're laughing, but my wife does the same thing every day. Honey, I think I found something. She looks at me like I am crazy.
I wish you luck in finding one.
How beautiful would that be? I'm going to leave this over here.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
And let's see. We have.
I have a receipt of communication.
Well, I was going to.
So you got to know somebody else? Okay.
Let the ladies and the people from vote411.org, Sharon Ailing, and anybody else who wants to come up there with you, come share with you what you wanted to.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to say I drive a Volkswagen stick shift, so I could steal that rabbit. Also, I think the national news would love to hear about your rabbit. I think it'd put Irmo on the map. But I'm here tonight. My name is Sharon Ailing. Perhaps you've heard of me. Well, that's a good thing. And I would like to introduce my colleagues from the League of Women Voters. They are Miss Julie Sellers, Mr. and Mrs. Elizabeth Jones, Anita Baker, and Rosa Bennett. And thank you for letting me speak to you tonight on behalf of the League of Women Voters. We are completely nonpartisan, and we work to inform and engage citizens in the democratic process. That is our reason for being. We want to talk about the 2019 voter guide found on the website vote411.org. And I hope everybody has this little card. When voters type in their address on that site, they will see all the candidates who have filed for upcoming races, information on how to contact those candidates, and also how to find their website and their social media sites. Candidates who are running for election will receive an invitation to participate in vote411.org, and they'll be given a link directly. When the candidate responds to this invitation, they will put in their background information and include answers to some questions about current issues. And this participation is free. There's not a lot of things that are free anymore. It'll be available 24/7 on the internet throughout the state. We hope any of you running for re-election or for office will take advantage of this opportunity. We encourage voters to use it to find out if they aren't familiar with the candidate. They can learn the candidate's positions, compare them, and we hope will help us promote this because during the 2018 election, 90,000 individuals visited the site statewide, and in Richland and Lexington, there were 17,000 people who went on the site to help them find out about the candidates. They can also find out where their polling place is, find out if they're registered to vote, see what kind of ID they need. So we sincerely hope you will promote this, and we gave you the card so you won't forget. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. Thank you.
And you said you had a consideration?
Yeah, I got the receipt of communications. I got two of them, actually. First one I got is based on the conversation we've had. Bob, I would like for you to, about the students cutting grass, I want you to add to the next agenda from the information I just received from Kathy and our lawyer, Chip. I want you to add to the next agenda an ordinance that will modify the peddler's ordinance to allow teenagers to cut grass. And I'll get with you on the exact language between now and the next agenda. But I want that on there as a new business item, okay? The next receipt communications I have is something that rattled my brains and rattled my nerves this morning. The incident occurred with IPD. Every Tuesday and Thursday, I walk my neighborhood with my neighbor on the pass around Arches Court. And we get up about 5:30 in the morning before the sun comes up. I meet him at his house about 6 o'clock in the morning. And it's dark, so we got little flashlights. And I got on my walking attire, which is black pants and, a T-shirt, dark T-shirt. So I'm walking down the path to go to my neighbor's house, and he usually meets me outside early in the morning, 6 o'clock. It's pitch black. I got my flashlight. For some reason this morning, he did not meet me outside. So I took my flashlight and shined it in his window to let him know I was outside. And this is about 6 o'clock, 6:03 in the morning. By 6:05 in the morning, 3 IPD police officers came up to me, and one jumped out. Car didn't know who I was, and I didn't tell him who I was. I was a citizen shining a flashlight in somebody's house. 6 o'clock in the morning was pitch black. He was very cordial, and I was very cordial to him. I said, "Hi, what's the problem, officer?" "Oh, we got a report of a suspicious person casing a house." And I guess I was that suspicious person. But I tell you this, why my nerves was rattled, because I was very impressed with the way your officer acted. He didn't jump out with his Glock. He didn't cuss at me. He didn't act like I was a criminal from the local prison escaping, trying to case a house. He simply got out of his car and asked me, "Hey, what's going on? What are you doing?" And I walked up to him, and I wasn't aggressive to him, and I said, "Sir, I'm waiting for my walking partner to come out. I'm just shining the light to let him know I'm outside." Lo and behold, about that time, my walking partner came out of his house. "Hey, Barry, what's going on?" And my neighbor that called the police came out of her house. And so at 6:15 in the morning, we had a little reunion going on. And of course, IPD with the lights on the car and the very fine officers and very nice cars was all on Archer's Lane. No rabbits. All on Archer's Lane, protecting the community. And I got a big kick out of it. I thought it was hilarious that I'm trying to exercise at 6 in the morning before the sun come up. Nobody can see me and see how slow I walk. And my partner was there, and my walking partner was there. We all got a big laugh. But I wanted you to know tonight that I was very impressed with the officer. I was very impressed how IPD responded so quickly. I mean, I hadn't been 5 minutes less than 3 minutes, actually, from the time they got the call to the time there was 3 officers, 3 patrol cars on my street. And I want to thank y'all for doing that. I also wanted to let you know I would like to thank the community that we have people and citizens who look out for each other at 6 in the morning before the sun comes up. You know, I was there trying to get some exercise, and there were enough people that are up that early, getting ready to go to work, do whatever, but they responded. They saw something, they didn't know what it was, they reported it, and you guys did your job, and I want to thank you very much for doing that. And that's what makes Irmo such a great place to live. That's my receipt of communications. I want to thank the IPD for that.
Any others?
Receipt of communication?
Yeah.
Along the line of Councilman Walker, I want to read a letter that our town administrator had received from a constituent. It said, "Dear Bob, I wanted to let you know about 2 town of Irmo workers who helped me after a bicycle crash where I had fallen backward down an embankment and hurt my jaw, wrist, and shoulder. While riding up the steep hill before a police station, my bicycle gear failed. I crashed the back of my head against the stones on the bank. Thankfully, Jimbo Masalo saw me fall and rushed to my aid. Fortunately, my helmet saved me from more serious injury. The helmet cracked partially in 2 from the impact. After asking if I was broken anywhere, he helped me get untangled from my bike and on my feet. Jimbo called Whit Klein, and he took the bike and me home in his truck. God bless our workers for being good Irmese in the truest sense of the word." This is exactly what we have working for us in the town of Irmo. It's one of the reasons why we are one of the best cities in South Carolina in which to live. This is an incredible testament of everyone in this town, and especially the people who work for this town. So proud, as we are all, of this. And I just want to say, our police are fantastic. Anyone who would say anything other than that doesn't understand exactly what you guys do every day. And Mr. Klein, thank you, and thank everyone who works to make sure that our citizenry are well taken care of. Thank you.
Any other considerations, receipts of communication? Next is presentation by citizens for agenda items, and let's see. The first one is Mike Ward.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Just wanted to get up and say that I was proud and impressed to see there are some ordinances proposed for decorum, council members addressing one another. I hope that you have a lot of discussion, because I've looked at the ordinances that are written, and you have 2.5 full pages of rules. After seeing what occurred at the beginning of the meeting, it may be difficult to try to remember all of these rules to enforce them. So my recommendation would be maybe to pare it down to a few of the fewer rules so that you can enforce those, get used to those, and then come up with some more. But I'm encouraged to see that you're at least moving forward with it. Thank y'all so much.
Thank you. And number 2 is Ms. Buck, Jacqueline Buck.
Good evening. I'm Jack Buck, and I am here to represent Keep the Midlands Beautiful. I'm the executive director, have been for going on 8 years. You are familiar with me. I am my organization is on the agenda for consideration tonight. I just wanted to touch base with you a little bit about Keep the Midlands Beautiful, just so you have a little bit of reminder of what we do, and a little bit of background that you may have forgotten, and also some of our newer council members may not be aware of. Keep the Midlands Beautiful is celebrating our 30th anniversary this year, and we're very proud of that. We're proud of the partnerships that we've made in the community. And since I've been the executive director, one of those strong partnerships has been the town of Irmo. Since coming on board, Keep the Midlands Beautiful has written grants for the town of Irmo that has summed up to the amount of $30,000. And that includes the Veterans Park, the community park, and also in recycle containers. So when you think about funding Keep the Midlands Beautiful, think about what other organizations come in front of you and ask you for funding that actually go out and get funding back for the town of Irmo, because that's something that we do. You don't have employees that work for you here at the town of Irmo, I'm thinking, that go out and ask you for money, but then actually put money back in your pocket. And that's what our organization does. I'm not your employee, but I'm always looking for funding for municipalities for what we can do for you. We also give back in the sense of in our surrounding community. In the surrounding community of Irmo, just this year, we're doing a $20,000 project matched by the ICRC and Michael J. Mungo Foundation to replace the bridge that was washed out at the Mungo Beach Park that will now bridge the gap for 116 acres. That means people in Coldstream will be able to now access back over the golf course that was closed down, and it's now going to be a wonderful access for both the new facility that the Mungos have now revamped and has just opened for weddings, for whatever family event you may have, for reunions, for anniversary parties. And also the bridge is going to be a wonderful place where you can take family photos, senior pictures, things like that. So in our partnership, we've come up with over $60,000 in partner funding to replace that bridge. Now, yes, it's not in the town of Irmo, but it's just outside, and a lot of Irmese will be using that park. We've done also, the UPS grant that we just received is $5,000 in trees to go around that bridge that was washed out in the flood of 2015. We also just secured a TD grant for $24,000 that we'll be planting trees along the St. Andrews corridor for revitalization across from Shore plant, the industrial plant. Again, a feeder into the town of Irmo. If you're keeping your areas that feed into your town revitalized, looking good, then what's coming into Irmo will be looking good. It's the broken window theory. If you keep your windows looking good, clean, and around, you're not going to have broken windows around you that are going to feed in to your town. So actually, that $50,000 that we've just got this year is not actually feeding right into your town, but it's right around the edge, and we're doing that. This morning we gave away, in our partnership with Lowe's, to the Midlands Gang Enforcement Unit. I believe one of the deputies, or one of the Irmo police officers is on that unit. So we facilitated paint for the from Lowe's to the gang unit. So that means anywhere in Irmo that is tagged by a gang in Richland County, in the area around, the gang unit will come immediately because we want those markings down straight away. But we helped fund by a grant that paint to all of those offices. That's Richland County offices, that's your Irmo officer, that's USC offices, and that's also the City of Columbia's, but it's one task force unit. And also the October 12th recycling event that's coming up. We partner with the County of Lexington. We partner with the county of Richland County, because 8 years ago when I started this, the recycling was something that we got money for. They actually paid us for our old TVs, for the stuff that was on the cement parking lot of Crossroads, when I had Representative Huggins, when Bob's children came out and helped pack, when Kathy, you dropped off your stuff, when Barry was always there. Those were my volunteers. Now it's a huge event. Over $63,000 is spent on just household hazardous waste. It's a huge event. Keep the Midlands Beautiful's yearly budget is not able to put on 6 events like that, which we partner with just Lexington County. We also partner with Richland County for those events. We also put on some of our own. There has been some frustration, from my understanding, from the town about those events. So any questions that you may have about that, I'm happy to answer. But we do fund all the shred events that go with those recycling, and we do provide volunteers at different events. I know that Public Works is providing volunteers this year for that event, but that's their choice. For them to do that, that's a wonderful thing. We've been doing it for 7 years, as you can attest because you've always seen me there. So I say that I hope that the town of Irmo people will take advantage of Lexington County, Richland County residents, because again, when I came on board, one of the biggest things I wanted to do was bring this Midlands Coalition together. It's silly to have something in the town of Irmo that only Lexington residents can come to, or have something in Chapin that only Richland County residents to come into. So we formed this coalition that all the residents could come to. It's from 8 to 12, and now you can have shred, electronics, you can have household hazardous waste, pesticides, scrap metal, and now Lexington County's brought along Goodwill. So that's their choice. We've also, just to let you know, one of the things that planting trees does, like we did with those 30 trees that we planted down Kiowa that comes into Westcott, that's a huge illegal dumping site. We planted 30 crepe myrtle trees, and since then, we have not had one report. That's 2 years of an illegal dump, because it's right down from Bush River Road Recycling Center, and they would dump refrigerators, things that couldn't go, they wouldn't take at the recycling center. They would just back up a truck, and it was also a staging center for DOT trucks or other trucks, and it was an eyesore. Now you go down Kiowa Road, you see beautiful crepe myrtle trees, just like you see what Witt's planted along, the railroad tracks, but it all looks wonderful, and that's what we want. We want these corridors. So I hope you will consider to continue to fund Keep the Midlands Beautiful. Our gala for our 30th anniversary is coming up. It is my swan song. I will be retiring at the end of the year. So I do hope that you will continue to fund Keep the Midlands Beautiful. It really is an organization that does give back to your community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And next is Eric Sickinger.
That's a tough act to follow. A lot of passion there. Hello, good evening. So I wanted to jump right into agenda items, and I won't be as quick as Mr. Ward, but that's okay. I've got like 10 minutes anyway. So we'll jump right to D, first reading of meeting section 265, council and decorum. So that list is particularly long, as Mr. Ward said. As I read through it, I'm curious how we're going to define involving personalities and comments, how we're going to define frivolous motions, how we're going to define political speeches. My concern is, if that's left up to the whims of the chair, that the determination on that could be based on your own preferences. So I'd ask that maybe you strike those individual motions or line items. I'm fine moving 10 minutes to 3 minutes, by the way, on the next agenda item. If everybody came up here and stood and used up all their time, the meetings would be even longer than they already are. Moving on to F, which is public participation by citizens. That's where really I get, and all of us get a chance to speak, right? So that's really important to me. The decorum of the people in the room, though, is also really important, right? If someone says something that the people in the room don't like, they should not jeer. Completely agree with that. If I say something that is in the minority that the majority of the room doesn't agree with, I shouldn't feel afraid to speak that. However, I also want to be really careful about audience will refrain from commenting, shouting, booing, clapping, stomping feet, or inappropriate disruptive behavior. So there's a history of dissent and approval in public forums. And the ability of those in the room to, in one fashion or another, make that approval or disapproval known. Now, that disapproval might just be silence, which is okay. But approval in a variety of fashions, you know, and as silly as it is, I've seen at other council meetings when I watch for my business purposes, something as simple as snapping their fingers to show their approval. Certainly can't say that that's disruptive, but I think that allowing the audience to show their approval when someone says something that they like is really important. I certainly don't think that anyone should be shouting, yelling, and screaming, although I appreciate that being on there. So moving ahead to G, Sister Hazel. Yeah. Now, I don't know about the amount of money there. Maybe we should just entice them to come, but...
No.
Good luck with that.
You know, we've had two great stories already today about how great Irmo is. We've had a couple of great examples already from earlier with the rabbit story and keeping Midlands beautiful. Maybe we can just sell them on the idea that they should do it and help make Irmo even better for free. They only have like a single anyway. But moving ahead, I don't know who Patrick Davis Acoustic Trio is, but that's not really a ton of money. I do want to move to Midlands Beautiful, and I think that any resident of Irmo or the surrounding areas will agree with the statement that that this area is beautiful, and we should keep it that way. And I completely support the concept of what keeping is doing. And you know, there are times where I'll walk down our neighborhood. They're in Hidden Oaks, our neighborhood, Mr. Pulea, and I look at those trees, you know, and I look at the environment that we're in, and I drive around Friarsgate, and it really is. We have a great place that we live, and we should continue to support groups that are helping that, keeping it that way. Moving ahead, so down to, I'm not sure much about K, because I didn't see the long agenda before I got here. But L, M, and N. So I'm curious about where these referendum questions came from, because there was a particular Irmo resident who was posting questions very similar to this, and I'm not sure if he got them from the council or if they were presented to the council outside of the chamber. But if you are open to the concept that residents should present the council with questions that should be on a referendum, what I did was I spent about 15 minutes before the meeting today and wrote down some questions that I know some people in Irmo are concerned about. Now, some of these are in jest and some of them are very serious. I'll let you decide which is which. So I have a list of questions that I'm submitting for referendum questions. Should the town reduce or eliminate multifamily housing and general commercial? Should the town buy property that in doing so might potentially represent a conflict of interest between buyer and seller? Should the town buy property? Should residents of Irmo proper be required to have their trash picked up or let the free market decide.
Can you slow down, please? Unless you have this written somewhere, I can.
Yeah, I'm going to submit them to the
Okay,
council
thank
afterwards. Should Irmo residents be limited to 3 minutes of remarks at council meetings? Should pigs be allowed as pets? Should the town hire or outsource a grant writer? Should the town hire or search for an event coordinator? Should the town increase the franchise fees to pay for town expenses? Should the town request that all new development have an impact fee assessment? Should the town allow carports in front of driveways, in front of houses, for those without garages? Should the town change the 1 warning per year on abatement policy? Should the town rejoin with the Chamber of Commerce to establish a collaborative business environment? Should the town make a more proactive approach to issues facing the town outside of council control, like the railroad tracks in the Friars Gate, utilities, lost animals, and potholes and repaving? Last, and it's not really an agenda item, but it relates to the agenda, and that is I'm wondering if we can get the long agenda earlier. I know that it is put online, but it's not put on generally, so it's just the timing of the thing. It would be great if we could get the full, with all the notes and graphs and the full detail of the agenda earlier. Thanks.
Thank you. And that was it. Next item then is unfinished business. Item A, third and final reading. I lost it. There we go. Ordinance 1912. This is the one having to do with the fireworks. Is there a motion for third and final reading of 1912?
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
Go ahead.
This is just changing some wording so that it matches the state law, I believe. And that's about it. I don't think it changes anything else.
Yeah, I'm in agreement.
Yeah, it's just more or less house cleaning, clerical, to get rid of stuff that's been changed in the state law and make ours match up with that.
Right.
Any more discussion? All in favor then of third and final reading of 1912, so a show of hands. Next is third and final reading of ordinance 1913. This is the one that has to do with the changing of the neighborhood commercial to general commercial on Carlisle. Is there a motion for third reading?
So move.
And second?
Second.
And Councilman Walker?
Okay, the third and final reading has been upon us tonight, and there's 2 issues that I'm concerned about. First of all, we rushed to get to the third and final reading with the call of a special meeting to make this happen. I wasn't here for the first reading, and apparently the second reading, I don't know what the rush was all about, but apparently I was told at the second reading, at the special meeting, that the developer wanted to get his approval so he can go ahead and start, digging the property and renovating it. But I reached out to the developer and asked for a conversation of what exactly is he planning on developing in particular. Mr. Mayor, you referenced a new development there being a Starbucks. At the last meeting, you referenced that, Mr. Mayor, and don't interrupt me. You referenced that. Excuse me?
I didn't reference that.
Mr. Mayor, are you interrupting me in the middle of my...
I'm just telling you.
Mr. Mayor, are you interrupting me? Is that not part of Robert's Rules of Order, not to interrupt the speaker? And you're interrupting me right now.
I'm correcting this statement.
But you're correcting me in the improper way to do it, according to Robert's Rules of Order, since I had the floor. So can I continue, please?
As long as you make no...
Can I continue, please?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, I was told that this was supposed to be done in an orderly fashion. You had to have this done. The developer needed to get this done as soon as possible. Well, I had some questions about it, the development that's going to be built there. And from what I understand, I reached out to the developer, and he emailed me back and said, hey, I'll get with you, but it never happened between the last special meeting and today. So I don't know definitely what's happening there. I haven't seen any plans. I haven't talked to the developer what he's going to be built there. But y'all seem to know, when I say y'all, council members seem to know what the ingress and egress of this new development is going to be. And that's funny because I haven't seen any written documentation on what they're going to build there. My second concern is the impact to the traffic on Lake Murray Boulevard and Woodrow Street. If it in fact is going to be a high-density coffee shop, which will require people with a drive-through to come in and out of that property, I'd like to see a layout of the plans of what they're going to develop and where these ingress and egress are going to be. And especially if it's a high-density coffee shop like we have on Broad River Road in Irmo and like we have at Starbucks in the Kroger Kroger grocery store. Is this going to be a traffic nightmare to get in and out of that area? I don't know. I haven't seen any plans. Also, the environmental impact, I've asked for a definition of what they're going to be removing and what environmental concerns that they have there. Apparently there was a dry cleaner there that had a lot of soil that was contaminated by the chemicals they use to dry clean. So when they disturb that soil, what is the impact to the environment? What is it going to be the impact to the surrounding area? There are a bank next there. I believe the Monts have a house down there. I don't know what there's a church diagonally across the street. What is going to be the impact to the area? What is it going to be the impact to the other existing environment when they disturb this soil and that's been environmentally challenged, I believe? I don't know what their plan is for that. I don't know what their plan is, where they're going to move the soil to when they do dig it up. Where they're going to put it at. Are they going to put it in our backyard? They're going to put it in my backyard? Where are they going to take this soil? These are the questions I've had, and this is for the concerns of the health of our community, not for the concerns of a developer wanting to get something done in a hurry and rush this process through. Now, if he can, they say he's going to go from a strip mall that had 5 businesses to one that has 2. But that's great. But if you put a quote-unquote high-density coffee shop there with a drive-through and the traffic is backed up all the way to Lake Murray Boulevard, or even worse, backed up to Woodrow Street and people trying to get from Lake Murray Boulevard to across the tracks, it's going to be a very, very difficult situation. And I'm concerned about the safety of the drivers on Lake Murray Boulevard early in the morning, coming across them train tracks, getting to I-26. I'm concerned about the impact to the environment that may be infected by this contaminated soil that this guy wants to disturb and move. Those things need to be addressed before we give third reading to rezoning. Now, if he can build what he wants to build without the third reading, have at it. But I think we need to know about these things for the concern of the citizens before that happens. So in that light, I'm making a motion that we defer third reading of this until after the next agenda. What's that next meeting, Bob? When is that? Until September 17th, and give the developer an opportunity to get that information to me and to council, what the impact is going to be. I get the questions answered. What is the traffic? What is the development going to be looking like? What is development? What is the new structure going to look like? What's the ingress and egress going to be? What are you going to do with the contaminated soil once you disturb that dirt? What is the impact of that disturbance going to be to the environment and to the surrounding properties? That's the information I want, and that's the motion I'd like to make.
Is there a second? All right.
Did I second that? No.
Yeah.
I mean, the first thing.
You seconded the motion to do third reading.
Okay.
Mary made a
Okay.
motion, you seconded it.
So is it my turn to talk?
Well, there's a motion on the table right now. We either have to second that
Okay.
motion or it dies.
Well, you want me to withdraw my motion so you can talk first?
Yeah,
Okay, I withdraw my motion.
thank you. I don't know why it is that I know some of these answers, unless it was the meeting when you were sick. Was that when the man was here? Right? That's right, okay. Because he answered a lot of this.
He did
And
at
I'm
that
sorry
first
you
meeting?
missed it. Now, the thing about the dry cleaning fluid and all that.
Right, the environment.
As I understand it, DHEC resolves that, not us. So whatever is done, they will either supervise or do, and this man will pay for. Now, the Starbucks thing, he couldn't say the name Starbucks. He said, I believe it'll be a coffee company. he couldn't say it, huh?
I don't think he said that.
He didn't say
He said
Starbucks.
he didn't know who.
Yeah. He could not say who it was, just like we couldn't say when Walmart was moving in it. We just said
Right.
a large store. Anyway, he couldn't say the name of it. So the Starbucks is our interpretation of what it is. But anyway, the man does not have to submit a plan until after we change the zoning. But his parking plan is the reason we're doing this. And he explained it pretty well when he was at that. I got it. I understood what he was doing. It sounded good. And
He explained it in the council meeting?
yeah, the
'Cause
first reading of this, he was here. And the only reason, when you said traffic study, this was my traffic study. I wrote out there and figured out all the ways I could come back from that shopping center, either through Town Hall or Woodrow. I mean, there's a lot of ways. I think we're all right with this. I don't think Lake Murray Boulevard is terrible, but there's nothing we can do about it. It may increase it some, but there's a lot of back roads to this property, which I think will help with ingress and egress. Anyway, that's why I second.
Okay.
I hate that you weren't. I'm sorry you were ill, because that's where we got our information, was that night. I'm sorry.
well, I'm glad to know that, but
Anybody else?
Mr. Bill,
I also wanted to add, there was a lot of stuff, this thing came out on that internet, whatever it was,
Yeah,
before we
yeah.
ever knew anything about it.
That's
Somebody posted it on whatever that site is, I can't remember what that site is, but it was posted on there. The original thing showed a Starbucks going in there,
Yeah.
and then it went off, and then it came back on later after the gentleman bought it. And at that time, it just showed the footprint of the building and the parking and the whole shebang. It didn't say anything about Starbucks, and when he came that night, he couldn't confirm or deny or
he
confirm
couldn't
that
say the name.
they were coming in.
Yeah.
He said he's just buying the land, building the building, and he'll make it available for rent. Two units that are built side by side, pretty much like the same one that's over there at Circle K, across from Toyota. It's kind of a building like that where there's two places side by side. One of them had a drive-through and one of them didn't. And I think the situation here is the way that building is laid out. So many feet of it, if I remember what Bob said, 4 or 5 foot of it, is going to overhang into this neighborhood commercial zoning. And he wanted to change that to general commercial so that he can build his building the way he wants to instead of trying to slide it forward and all that other stuff. The back building back there where the White House is, basically is going to be torn down, and that looked like a lot of parking lot, the rear parking, because there ain't a whole lot of parking in the front. That's why he's going to build that building back, is to get good entrance and all in front and some parking, but also a drive-through, but most of his parking would be in the rear. As Kathy said, DHEC does go over the cleanup, and DHEC approves the traffic flow. Once that plan is approved,
I'm sorry, you said DHEC approves the traffic flow?
DOT.
Okay.
Once that plan, and the only thing we're approving tonight, we don't approve plans. We don't approve what type business goes in. The only thing we approve is the zoning on the property, and then whatever the zoning is whatever can go in there. Once he gets the zoning, and then once he submits his stuff to Bob and it goes to planning, and then DOT gets it after that, and then they tell him basically what he's got to do. There is a requirement, from my understanding, that DOT is going to make either this property or the one across the street, the Dula property, or both combination, however they want to work it out. They don't care, DOT doesn't. But they want a concrete medium from Woodrow Street, so to speak, down to Carlisle Street, so that there'll be no left-hand traffic coming out of either one of those two places. Everybody that comes out of those will have to turn right because of that intersection, railroad track, line of sight, the whole shebang. And I'm guessing that whoever builds first is going to have to pay for it. Don't know that, but that is probably, from my understanding, going to be one of their requirements, is to make him, if he builds first, is to put that concrete medium in there. Don't know that that's a great thing, but that's what they say, that's what they want. I guess that's what they'll have to do. He's aware of it, he's been told about it, so I guess he's not afraid to move forward with that cost. But the only thing that we do is approve the zoning change or not. Being that it's general commercial, anything that's general commercial can go in general commercial. And at the same time, if somebody is changing a land to general commercial, it's really not to us to find out what's going in there and approve it based on that or not approve it based on that. There's a whole lot of liability tied up with that too. If we approve one general commercial and not another because we hear, whether it's an apartment or a topless go-go or whatever it may be, going into it, there's liability for that. That's why we don't approve what type business. We just approve the zoning or not approve the zoning. As far as the high density, whether it's a coffee shop or not, I don't know that. One of the things that was brought to my attention too is Dunkin' Donuts, same type place. I think when we had that discussion on the apartments going on, there was one of those apartments being built in Spartanburg. They did a traffic study. There was about 400 ins and outs there a day based on that traffic study. There was a Dunkin' Donuts down the road, 3,500 ins and outs a day. Starbucks or whatever may go in there probably would be similar, if that's who it is. I don't know. They may even be more. I don't know. But again, even if we do a traffic study before we do one or after we do one, there's got to be some kind of requirement. We have no requirement. We'd have to do an ordinance first that says we're going to require traffic studies in the future, and if they're over whatever determination we come up with based on whatever type business, then they would have to do whatever we tell them they have to do. None of that's been brought up. So the only thing we could do, even if we wanted a traffic study, is tell them to pay for one, or we'd pay for it, but then it would go on the shelf because we can't require them to do anything based on that traffic study. So the only thing we can do is either vote for it or vote against it based on whatever we think is right or wrong, regardless of what's going in there or what's perceived to go in there or what somebody rumored to go in there. And, we were at a business grand opening down the road a little bit earlier, Irmo Wellness Center. And, we're talking about bringing businesses in and how great it is and wonderful it is and all that. And this one is probably smaller than that one, probably less people pulling in and out of there. And we had no discussion on that one.
You done?
Yes.
Recognize me again?
Yes.
That's great and good, Mr. Mayor, that they may be possibly could maybe happen to put a concrete medium in to not allow any right turn or left turn or whatever you're saying that what they're going to do. We don't know that. We have not seen any diagrams or any plans, and I think it's our responsibility as a council to make sure we don't create a traffic nightmare, unknowing what they're going to build. I'm sorry, I don't have any knowledge or forethought of the website you claimed that was showing a Starbucks that went away and came back and had to lay out. You said that this was on one of those sites on Facebook, and now you tell me that you don't know anything about it because it's not a requirement to know what they're going to build there. But I'm sorry, I, as a council member, want to know before I grant a blanket statement that they can build whatever they want, what the impact to the safety and the commercial, what the impact to the safety and the traffic is going to be in that particular intersection. Lake Murray Boulevard is a very high-traveled area. Up and down, in the afternoon at 5 o'clock, try to get through Lake Murray Boulevard basically from the CVS all the way down to the train tracks. It's almost impossible. It's almost a parking lot to get to that light. And now you're going to add, in the morning, a high-density, potentially high-density coffee shop, whether it's Dunkin' Donuts or Starbucks or whatever, in the mix, and people want to grab a cup of Java on the way to work. I'm sorry. No, I'm not willing to just give a blanket approval and let him go before I know I'll have some more conversations with the builder and what he's going to build. Now, as far as the environmental stuff, yeah, DHEC is certainly the agency that controls that. And DHEC is the one that will supervise the removal of all the hazardous soil. But I want to know where they're going to pull it. I want to know where they're going to take that soil. I want to know what the impact to the existing surrounding businesses is going to be when that soil is disturbed. Are we going to find out that they move some soil and cause another hazardous leak of something that's going to affect the water table or the drainage into the sewer system, which goes directly into Lake Murray and to the Saluda River? Is that what we're going to find out after the fact because they're disturbing that soil? And I know that the agency is in charge of watching that, is very good at doing that. But I have information, I have questions that I'd like to get answered before we go forward. Now, if the builder can do what he wants to do without having the zoning, have at it. We won't, by us asking for a deferment on this zoning until next meeting, or the deferment on the vote on this until next meeting, he can certainly go ahead and do what he's starting to do. And after I get my questions answered, I'll vote for it. But I think we need that time to allow the builder to get those questions answered before we go forward. So I make a motion that we take third and final reading and move it to the September 17th meeting and let the builder have enough opportunity to answer the questions I have. And if you don't feel he has to answer those questions, then, oh well, I am making that motion that we do that.
Is there a second? No second, motion will die for lack of second. Any more comments?
I just want to say I've been involved with other cleaning of soils that the state would get involved with, and they do an incredible job to, in essence, clean it completely. And I guarantee you DHEC is going to make sure that soil is completely clean. And normally it's brought right back to where it is. They clean it right there. They strip it of all of the chemicals. They normally leave it right there. That's what I've been familiar with.
They don't remove it and take it away? Okay, you're telling me that they're going to dig this stuff up?
I'm saying
Got the floor. Let him finish.
In places that I have been involved with, they clean it right there. They clean it right there. They bring in machines that cleans the soil, and they normally leave it right there. They don't necessarily take it away.
Can I add to hit, is it my turn? Okay. Something that you would be more familiar with. There used to be a plant on Bush River Road.
Allied Chemical.
No, further down.
Yeah, the
Where
right
the
behind
Santa
Aldi's.
They cleaned
Right.
that and the chemicals in it and allowed the dog park to be built.
GE.
Huh?
The GE plant was there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
GE. It's already happened.
They cleaned it and left it there, or they cleaned it, removed it?
They cleaned it. I don't remember any removal. I remember them injecting things and
Yep.
into the soil to counterbalance or whatever, and made it a dog park. They still said that it could not be used for certain things, but over time it will be. Anyway, that's how it's done.
You want to come in? I wanted to comment a second time as well. You had made a couple comments about potentially traffic high, all that kind of stuff. We don't know that. It could be potentially anybody that opens up on Lake Murray Boulevard. It's probably going to be a busy type business. I can't imagine somebody affording land over there that doesn't have a lot of traffic flow. But we didn't know none of that same stuff when the shopping center at Dunkin' Donuts down the street got built. We didn't know none of that stuff when the Irmo Wellness Center down here, they had to move a lot of dirt. We didn't require them to do traffic studies. We didn't require Honda dealership to do stuff. There were no questions of them what they were going to do with their dirt. It's just kind of odd that another possible competitor to Dunkin' Donuts wants to open up here, and there's some concern about that. I also had some questions in regards to that. You also made a comment, I'm not sure 100%, I had to go back and watch it, but something to the effect of that if you approved of what they were doing, then you would approve of the zoning change.
You done?
Is that correct?
I don't know what you said. What did you say?
Well, you made a comment that you wanted to know all this stuff before you voted on it, and if you got all your answers questioned, and if you approved what was going in, then you would approve the zoning change.
If I got all my questions answered, and the information that I got, that gives me more of a comfort zone of how they're gonna clean the soil, and well, now that I found out that they're gonna clean the soil and leave it there and add more chemicals to counteract what's going on, I'm even more concerned now of the environmental impact to that area and our water infrastructure. I mean, think about it. You add more chemicals on top of what you already got there, and it's going to leak into the Saluda River drainage? Come on. That's even worse than what we have. I don't know what the process is. I thought they were going to dig it up and remove it.
It may not be, it may be.
I don't know, but that's the kind of questions I want to get answered, and we're rushing this zoning through to get it done. Now, this zoning change is so simple, and it's not going to stop them from going forward with their project. Let them go forward, and give them an opportunity to get the answers that I'm asking for. And if you don't want to do that, you want to go ahead and let them have the zoning change, I still want to know what they're going to do there and what the impact is going to be to the environment.
Well, once we
even if they do it.
We would know what.
So when we vote on it, let them vote on it.
I would entertain a motion to call the question. We've debated this quite a bit. Is there a motion to call the question?
I so move.
I'll second it.
All in favor then of calling the question, do so with show of hands. And let's see. All opposed? All right, so third and final reading, 1913. All in favor of the rezoning from neighborhood commercial to general commercial for that one track in between, do so with show of hands. All opposed? Next, I am going to make a motion to suspend the rules to take items G and H out of order so that we can vote on those two bans, and then Larry can go home. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion about suspending the rules and taking those two out of order? All in favor then to suspend the rules and take G and H out of order, do so with show of hands.
Well, if I may, why don't we also include, keep the Midlands
Yeah,
within that
that's
too?
a good idea.
Okay, so that would be G, H, and I.
Uh-huh.
All right. All in favor of that motion to take G, H, and I out of order, do so with show of hands. All righty, so we're in new business. We will go ahead and, is there a motion for approval to award a contract with Sister Hazel in the amount of $22,000 for the Oaks Trust?
I so move because I don't think we can entice them.
In a second.
Second.
Go ahead. And Larry, do you want to come up to the thing and speak?
Sure. This is our offer to the band. They haven't accepted it yet. We're trying to get them here for the 2020 event. And mostly what I tell you folks, it's all within our budget that's approved for 2019. This first thing we did last year is we actually paid the deposit for this year out of last year's budget. This is our deposit for next year coming out of this year's budget, and we're within our budget that's already been approved. So
I think it's a good idea.
I'm moving it a decade or two younger than me is where we're going for some of the bands here, so glad to hear people excited.
Any questions?
Sister Hazel is, the budget for Sister Hazel is coming out of the next year's budget?
Our deposit for Sister Hazel, which is $10,000.
So you just need $10,000.
Correct. It would be our deposit on the contract
Right.
for $20,000 for next year.
So that $22,000 total will be in the next year's orchestra budget?
$12,000 will be next year, $10,000.
Okay, 12,000? Okay, I got you. No problem.
Right.
I wanted to ask you, we almost had Lisa Gibbons as a chairwoman of the orchestra. Do you remember what she wanted to charge us to come?
Lot.
For the Grand Marshal?
Yes.
Yeah, we invited for Grand Marshal, and I never heard her request that we pay her anything for it. Mostly it was, I kind of had hopes that we would get her while she was here for something else, but it was going to involve, tickets.
I seem to remember it was an enormous amount of money. An enormous amount of money.
Well, no, in my conversations with her and her husband, which does booking, there really was not an appearance fee for her to be Grand Marshal. She did not request any payment for it. It was just the expenses of getting them here.
If I do remember, Casey and the Sunshine Band wanted $60,000.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
They're worth it.
You're
What?
right.
Look, do a little dance, make a little love. Come on, man.
It seems like we're spending a lot of money, but oh my goodness, it's staggering some of the bands. So,
Yeah. And there's no enticing them, I'm afraid.
no, sir, they don't need exposure. That old line, come in and get it for good exposure at the orchestra. No, sir, it's not. So we're shopping carefully and trying to get names, particularly the Saturday night big headliner spot that's going to attract attention and draw visitors. And I think we're doing great this year with Edmund McCain. We're going to see how it works. I think Sister Hazel will be an equal draw next year.
Okay, let's vote.
All in favor then of the approval to award the contract with Sister Hazel in the amount of $22,000, do so with show of hands. And the next one is the approval to award a contract with Patrick Davis Acoustic Trio in the amount of $7,500. Is there a motion for approval?
So move.
And a second.
Second.
Any discussion, questions? You want to comment?
Any questions? I'll tell you that that's an act for 2019. That'll be our opener for Edmund McCain. It was late being able to put him together. He's a performer, came out of Camden originally. That's where he grew up. He's a Nashville artist and songwriter, but he has a particular affection for Carolina fans because he's written some Very big, very well-received Gamecock supportive songs that play on the word Gamecock. Is that enough said?
So we're going to add $7,500 to this year's budget?
Which is also within our budget this year. So this is, again, part, you're not adding it, it's all still within the budgeted amount we had for entertainment this year.
So why do we need to approve it then if it's already in there?
You do, there is this.
Anything over X amount of dollars, we have to.
Yeah, and I'll let you, I'm just told, don't stand up here since it's a contract and since it's over a certain dollar amount. So that's why it's here. But it's within our 2019 budget.
Gotcha.
Okay, let's vote.
All in favor then of the approval to award a contract with Patrick Davis Acoustic Trio in the amount of $7,500, do so with show of hands. Thank you. And next is the approval for a contract with Keep the Midlands Beautiful in the amount of $3,500. Is there a motion for approval?
So move.
Is there a second?
There's a second.
And Councilman Walker.
As Ms. Buck has eloquently lamented to us about her impact on recycling in the town of Irmo, I think that this certainly is a steal to have the relationship built between the town of Irmo and the Keep the Midlands Beautiful organization. Everything is not free. They do these recycling events in and around Irmo because of the fact we don't have a major place, so we could do it in the town limits. So by her doing it at the Irmo High School, which is technically outside of the town of Irmo, but close enough that our citizens can take advantage of it, I think is a good deal. And the fact that we can bring the old tires and the old television and the monitors and all the things that we would normally see strewed across neighborhoods that would make them look slummy, we would not have to do that because Ms. Buck and her organization will handle it. They will have the recycling events that will allow them to take it there and have it took there. So I think that this is a grand idea. It's well worth the town budget being extended $3,500 to accommodate the Keep the Midlands Beautiful organization.
I second that.
Any other comments?
I just want to make a comment. I think recycling right now is under siege. And I think it's so sad. We have glass right now that's not being recycled. I have a problem each and every time I throw a piece of glass in the regular trash. It's again, so sad. I remember being a kid, and we used to recycle our soda bottles. They were made out of real glass. I used to go up and down the railroad looking for bottles that I could get a nickel and go and get some penny candy. And I used to get a lot of penny candy for a nickel. But truly, if we can get more information out there, there are many people in this town that feel it's not a worthwhile expense anymore to even to separate our normal weekly garbage. It's not a worthwhile expense, and I think it is. I think it is. Your choice is to landfill it or not to landfill it. I choose not to landfill it if we can, and there's an expense for doing that. But for our children, our grandchildren, I think it's the right thing to do. And if we can provide more information, more knowledge to people, and I think we did that. We had Sunoco come here.
We did, yes.
And they provided some excellent knowledge to understand what's going on here. This is a big thing. It's under siege, this whole concept of recycling.
It is. Unfortunately...
Hold on, Ms. Buck.
Sorry.
I'm finished.
Go ahead.
Unfortunately, the recycling events that Sunoco held, whether or not there was a lot of information that got out to residents to attend that it wasn't well attended in Irmo. There was only 18 folks that came to that event. And I spoke with the recycling educator who held that event. One of the things that we like to do is go to things like the Ochre Strut, to National Night Out, and provide the clear streams that are there so people can see, the clear bags. They can see their bottles, their cans that are being recycled. But yes, glass is a major problem right now because Sunoco is charging so much to recycle it. And that's one of the things that I know that Lexington County municipalities are trying to band together to stop recycling. And Richland County is talking about it, but they also have their own glass bunker.
Stop it.
For right now. Because it's just one of those things that is just become a very dirty, hard thing to recycle. Sunoco doesn't have the ability, or it's very, very expensive. There is great ways to recycle it. But at this point in South Carolina, we just don't have the tools and the right way that we're recycling it. And also, we don't have the haulers that want to recycle it. It's too heavy. It costs the municipalities too much. You're already paying so much. So it just becomes a cost. It's not cost effective for y'all to put that on to your citizens. It's not cost effective for you. And so that's one way that keeps the costs down.
Just as a point of information,
Yes.
if we get the trade thing done with China, won't that help? I mean, didn't China take a lot of our trash?
Unfortunately, the reason why that's turned around is because of what we were doing and what China was taking was all of our trash, and they weren't being very discriminatory about what they were taking. So we were sending bales and bales of plastic, but it had a high contamination rate. And now, if it's contaminated at a very small percentage rate, they send it back. So our carriers here, or our companies here that are sending it over, are not only paying for it to go over and then China knocks it back, they have to pay for it to come back. So that's why they're having to find different countries that are taking it. And even now, they're becoming more and more picky about what we're doing. And we can't expect other countries to take our trash. We have to find a way here to stop using so much plastic and use things that are recyclable, like back to cardboard, to stop using plastic bags, to stop using straws, and I can go on and on. They'll start climbing my green tree, and but thank you.
Yeah, there's so much recycling that there's such a glut of it, and the people who get it are requiring it to be clean, sorted, and all that stuff. Which cost more and more and more to clean it. Sunoco and all them, if they don't get it clean, like glass separated and all that stuff and not broken, then it's a little bit easier for them to get rid of it. But if they got to separate it and clean it and do all that stuff, it's just a cost. I think Bob had mentioned the other day when we went through this a couple of years ago, if we wanted to recycle glass at that time, because if it's not clean and there's not a demand, they got to do something to it, and then if they ain't got a place to put it, then they have to take it to the landfill as well. They got to dump it or store it. And it was $25 a ton. There's another municipality in this area that was paying It's $84 a ton to them now to take that same glass. They're looking at
It's a lot of money.
doing it because it's gone up so much. Mainly because there's such a glut. So many people have recycled, even in some of the places up north. Some of the articles I read, I don't know if it's Washington, Boston, but some of the large, they stopped it altogether. They just don't do it because they have to take it, do something with it, then it ends up stored or going to the dump. I think I read in California where they had that stuff stored, and when they got to 6 months of it, then they were hauling to dump. And it's, the cost is, unless we're willing to pay somebody to come pick it up, take it to a place, sort it out, then they got too many people close by that they can get it from that they can get it, or people are sorting it out. So it's got a lot of stuff to do before they figure out what to do. One of the questions I had on this particular thing here, and I'm not sure exactly what that means, but it says provide waste-wise recycling. What is that? That's the clear things you're talking about?
We can provide those for, like we just did for National Night Out. We do for the Okra Strut every year. We can provide it for your Christmas events. It's just a service that we provide. We provide all the bags. We've got trash containers. We've also got ash recycling. I can provide, right now, I've got probably over 1,000 of those cigarette butt containers, but a lot of the municipalities don't want to put them out because they don't want to promote smoking, but also you have smokers, so you want to keep cigarette butts from being on the ground. So, those are the kind of things that we'd like to promote at, like, Okra Strut. Bring those out, have them there, have them to be used. But we've always brought those out for Okra Strut. We bring out 30 or so clear streams and have all of the bags there for that, and partner with Sunoco on that. So, and then we always try and get volunteers, local kids to help out, or a lot of times, I think it was last year that Public Works did a lot of the emptying of the containers, but we always like to have the volunteers involved, like the ROTC, and then we pay them because it's a way for them to generate some funds for their club, so it's a way for us to give back to them.
Any other
No,
questions,
I think we ought
comments?
to vote on this.
I think that,
Go ahead.
I think that, thank you, Ms. Buck, for your presentation and your information, but I think we need to start right here on council and do away with these plastic bottles and let us bring our own vessels to drink water in. That will save us money to help her do her $35,000, and we can save the environment by not creating more plastic bottles going into the landfills, because I'm sure you're not recycling, right, Bob? You're just throwing it into the trash? Oh, we recycle those bottles? So now we're adding to more of your contaminated waste that China is rejecting back to us. We probably could start right here on council.
Right here.
By
Quit
having
buying
us
these
do
plastic bottles, Bob.
Bottles are one of the things that Sunoco will pick up, isn't it? These plastic bottles. They like plastic bottles, cans, and paper. I think that's the three things I like. Now, you can use these styrofoam cups until they finally disintegrate in your hand.
Well,
They eventually will. But
I know what I'm saying. We can stop plastic influx and bring our own cups and vessels in here to drink water with. So.
Well, being the old person, we could go back to paper straws,
Yeah.
paper cups, paper trays, cardboard, recyclable.
Yeah, cardboard.
When I
jugs.
was born, we used cloth diapers, not the diapers that people will leave anywhere, and they are hazardous waste, and there's no way to do anything with them either. But some of the old ideas of recycling was here a long time ago.
Yeah.
Councilman Pouliot talked about getting 5 cents for the bottles. Well, that may be in Rhode Island. We got 2 cents in South Carolina. And that was a weekend thing for me when I was little. Jerry Cameron, who grew up with me, Jerry lived 2 blocks around the corner. We used to get my wagon and his wagon and go all over Shandon getting Coke bottles. And everything was a Coke back then, whether it was a Pepsi or a Knee-High or whatever. It was a Coke bottle. Soda came from another part of the country. But we were recycling then because those bottles were being taken to the respective plants. They cleaned them, and they reused them. That's right. And they were under the control of DHEC, only it wasn't called DHEC back then, to be sure that everything was done correctly, and by the franchiser as well. But we need to make some changes.
And just for the record, this is 3,500.
Yeah.
Not 35,000. Right. Just make sure we correct that.
I was trying to give you 35,000. So you take it, wouldn't you take it?
Yeah.
Okay. I stand corrected. Thank you.
Any more comments? Any more questions?
No, I think we ought to give the lady her money.
All in favor then of the approval to contract with Keep the Midlands Beautiful in the amount of $3,500. Do so a show of hands. And now we're back to new business. First reading of ordinance 1914. This is the one that has to do with annexing that property over on Richland County. Is there a motion for first reading of ordinance 1914?
So moved.
And second.
Second.
And
It's across the street from my beauty shop, and it's next door to Lake Murray Flooring. So it certainly should be general commercial.
is it behind Lake Murray Flooring?
It's next,
Well, kind of
it's
behind.
right there.
So that's Lake Murray Flooring right there, that little red square.
Yes, because my beauty shop is right there, in case you need to know, And then all this is that those gymnastic places, but
That's over here. This big CG is the
it's,
air conditioning.
oh, yeah, but all of this, I think, is gymnastics.
Yeah, over here in white on Minister Drive. They're over there in that unincorporated area.
Okay.
Minister Drive.
Mm-hmm.
But that red thing is the, whatever that, Cressel Brothers. Castle Brothers, yeah. And let's see, who seconded that? Councilman Walker.
I concur with Ms. Condon.
Any more discussion? No. All in favor then of first reading of ordinance 1914, do so with show of hand. Next is 1916. This thing has to do with the Municipal Association has come out with what's called a standard business license ordinance. We've adopted that. They're also coming up with a portal where people can go online and pay their business license. In order to allow your business.
You want me to second this right quick?
Well, I hadn't made a motion. I just wanted to explain.
Okay, I make a motion.
All right. And I will second. But just for the record, that's what they're doing. If you don't have their dates, if you don't have their ordinance, if you don't have all their stuff the way theirs is, nobody in town can use that portal. So we had to.
Nobody in town can do what now?
Use that portal. They have created a portal where you can go in and pay your business license online.
Well, why do we need to use that portal? Why can't we do what we've been doing for the last 100 years?
You can still come in and pay it. But if
Through
you have,
town hall.
Yeah, if you have multiple locations, and one of the complaints out there about business license, that if you have 10 locations in the state, you have to pay that business license to 10 places.
Right.
So there's been an argument to have one place to pay it. So the municipal association has come up with a portal that they're making so that anybody in the state of South Carolina that's a business can use that portal to pay it for.
Okay, but right now, we can go to Mr. Bob, they can come in and say, Town Hall, here's my business license for the year, whatever, whenever we accept it. We don't want to use the portal, and I'm sure they're not gonna do the use of that portal for free. They're gonna charge us a commission for doing it, right? They're not gonna charge us any kind of service fees for letting them pay it through the portal?
They're paying the person that uses the portal pays an extra fee to do it.
That's what I'm saying, there's a fee for using that portal.
To the customer, yeah.
The guy can
Like
save, the
pay your
customer can
taxes.
save the money by going into Town Hall.
Yeah, same as if you pay your Richland County taxes online, they charge you a service fee.
So
A
that,
lot of places do.
but they can come into Town Hall and save that tax, that extra tax on top of the business license tax.
For the business in town, but they can't
Okay,
pay
I
them
don't think we
nowhere
need
else.
to be using it.
But this is for a company, correct me if I'm right, that have several locations within the state, and they can go to one portal and pay all of them.
All of them at one
I
time.
mean, it's a complaint that.
So it's either they can pay it through the portal, or they can come to Town Hall and pay it and
Either
save
way.
that portal fee.
Yeah.
All right, as long as we make that clear.
And the reason they're doing that is because of all this complaints and concerns over the years about business license and multiple locations, and everybody has different rate structures, and everybody has different due dates, and everybody has different late dates. So they have kind of got ahead of that and told the other option was the State Department of Revenue was going to do the portal, and they would take the money out of the town, and you'd have to do it online. You couldn't pay it into the town. It would have to be paid through that. So the municipal association decided to get in front of it, make the portal, create it. It's actually in service now, but they're just allowed certain municipalities, Greenwood and others, to use the thing until they kind of get all the little bugs worked out, and then come January or whenever next year, then everybody will be allowed to use that. Your rates will be up to you. They just want all the due dates the same and all the wording the same. Remember, we passed something earlier too that had to do with what's counted as income, what the definition is, and all that. That's something that the states were doing, and the municipal association wanted everybody to adopt that so that everybody had the same definition of revenue, income. Now they're asking if you want your people to use it, we don't have to do it, but you got to have the same cutoff days, the same due dates. Everything's got to be the same, and then your customers or your businesses can use it. So that's why this is on there, so that we can take care of that. So that come January, anybody in town that wants to pay it. Some businesses, like Castle Brothers, if they do business here in Lexington, any other place in this area, they got to have a business license for every one of them. If they can go on this portal and do it, then they can sit there and do everything at one time. They put in there how much revenue, the thing figures out what the business license is. It gets sent to every municipality. They verify that figure and make sure it's correct. Once they hit it's okay, then we get a check sent to us. So that's what all that's about. And that's the same thing on these dates here and the late dates on the other item. Any more? All in favor then of first reading 1916, do so with show of hands. And the second one is basically the same thing. It just has the late dates and that kind of stuff. Is there a motion for first reading of 1917?
I make a motion.
A second.
Any discussion? All in favor then of 1917, do so with show of hand. Next is first reading of ordinance 1918. This is the one, and I can explain that. I'll make a motion for first reading.
Second.
All these things are already in Robert's rules in some form, fashion, probably worded a little bit different. The Municipal Association puts out a book and has put out a book for years that goes over this stuff called How to Conduct an Effective Meeting. They also have one section in there that they talk about how to disrupt a meeting. Sometimes it's easier to talk about what is wrong than go over everything that you can do. And these things come out of their thing. It's just a short synopsis. All these things are Robert's rules. First be recognized, not interrupt, not carry on private conversations. That's all in Robert's rules. All comments are supposed to have to do with the business at hand. But if somebody wants to go to Robert's rules and try to read this and figure out all the sections where everything is and how it's in some of the parts, it'll tell you. With this, you need to go to page this to see the second part, page this. Some of it has to do with 4 or 5 different categories, so it's in 4 or 5 different categories. And so it is a little bit more difficult for people to follow it and understand it and find it. This basically takes exactly out of here the things that we are not to be doing in order to have an effective meeting. That's where they came out of, it's straight out of their thing. And again, all these things are in here. Whether the presiding officer takes liberty or not, the presiding officer could take liberty now as far as the stuff goes. So nothing in there is out of line with what's already in Robert's Rules. I just think in order for us to find an easier place for us to follow that, and at least, I mean, we can put this whole thing here in an ordinance. We basically have, but it's easier to sometimes pick out the things that you deal with the most and that have the most cause to cause a meeting to be disruptive, and just simplify those and put those on there. That's why it's in here the way it is, because it came right out of that book. And they're all things that if we want to have civil meetings, decorum, then we should be abiding by these things. We shouldn't be interrupting. We shouldn't be making frivolous motions. We shouldn't be making unnecessary points of order and all that kind of stuff. Those are always up to the presiding officer to determine. Sometimes it's a little bit lenient, and I have been more than lenient on a lot of that stuff over the years, just so that people could have them to express and debate. But arguing and getting to the things we've got to in the last couple of months are not about debate. They're about arguing, and they're about fussing and everything else, and that's not what we're here to do. We're basically here to come to a meeting, town council meeting, to make decisions, vote on stuff. We're for it, we're against it. We have an opportunity to convince others to be for or against it, and then after that, it's their opportunity to convince us to be for or against something, and then we should vote and move on. So that's where that is from. And who seconded that, I think?
I did.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I agree with this ordinance in the sense that first, you must be recognized by the presiding officer before speaking. And this is for the council members' decorum. But after that, not 9 times. You're trying to create a dictatorship on this dais. We're not here. We're here to listen to the people and listen to what their recommendations are, and to be the advocate for each one of the citizens here that put us on this dais. I believe this proposal is totally illegal, except for the first one: you must be recognized by the presiding officer. It's our First Amendment right to demand to be heard, to demand to say our piece in meetings, whether you agree to it or not. For you to make decisions that this is a frivolous motion, or for you to make decisions that I can't argue or debate with the presiding officer if you're wrong, that's totally unnecessary, and is not what the spirit of Robert's Rules was. We all took a motion we took an oath of office to the Constitution of the United States when we became council members. We did not take an office or oath of office to Robert's Rules of Order. We are not in the military, and you are not a dictator as the council presiding officer. And this is an attempt to make you such that, a dictator. I will make the decision, and you will not do this, and you will not do that, and you will not do that 9 times is not the way to run a meeting. We are all adults, we are all elected officials, and we all represent people in this audience, whether they agree with me or not. This amendment is fleeting, and it is not what the citizens elected us to do. The citizens didn't elect the chair to shut down any other council member who was in disagreement with what was happening or what was being presided at the time.
Anyone else?
Do you?
No, I think give it first reading, and then perhaps a couple of us or whatever ought to go over each one. I don't see anything wrong with it. I see what you mean about not. I get that. But this might need like a workshop or something, an hour where we just deal with this. Am I wrong? 'Cause
I agree.
I think it's too much to cover in a business meeting, and it needs to be covered, but it probably ought to be covered from 6 to 7, so we'd be ready to vote on it. That's just my thought.
Well, I just want to say that I have been involved in other boards where we followed Robert's Rules of Order. The thing that I think escapes many here is this is a business meeting. Mm-hmm. First and foremost, it is a business meeting. It is a meeting where we are to come prepared to vote. We're supposed to do some homework and make sure that we're ready to vote when we come here. It's not designed to allow anyone to be intimidated to be able to speak. That's the reason why cheering is not allowed. In other boards and in other city council meetings that I have been a part of, attended, this is the only one I know that has ever gotten like this. The only one. You would have been hammered, gabbled, or thrown out in other meetings that I've been involved with. We've allowed the pendulum to swing way, way over to the point I've had constituents calling me saying, Mark, I need you to do something about this, yet can you come to the meeting? Oh, I'm not going to that meeting. I'm not going to that meeting. That's not what we want to do. We want to allow people to get up no matter what, for or against. We want them to feel free and comfortable to come here and speak. It's so important.
Excuse me, point of order, Mr. Mayor, point of order. You said constituents. This ordinance is dealing with us, not the citizens. This is the council.
Understand, it is directing decorum amongst us.
Right. So they can allow to speak.
What's your point of order?
My point of order, he's off topic. He needs to stay on topic. We're talking about us as a council,
made your point.
not as the citizens.
Go ahead and we're going to talk about this. Yeah, one order.
This state's addressing council and decorum.
No. The ordinance says to allow each member of council to speak on an issue.
You are out of order. You're interrupting the speaker. He has the floor. This is what we're talking about.
That's what it
But
says.
this one has to do with us talking to each other.
Right.
This one is for that. The other one back here has to do with citizens. 1920, I think, yeah.
Do we conduct ourselves in the manner of that book? No.
No.
No, we don't.
No, we don't.
And
This pendulum has swung. Let's get it right back to where it belongs, so people will enjoy coming to these meetings. Everyone.
That book of Robert's Rules you have has explanations probably of each Robert's Rules, because I have a 1962 edition of Robert's Rules that I used in high school when I debated and used in college when I debated, and it's about the size of this folded, and it's about as thick as this side. Robert's Rules was compiled by a colonel in the United States Army, and it was primarily used for military court-martials, military infractions.
You're here.
But as time passed, towns, state government began to adopt Robert's Rules because it was something that was known by many people as their go-to for order in a meeting. When I was in the service and I was in Korea, I realized, not that it all of a sudden came to me, but I started driving at 14 in South Carolina. When I got my license, you could get your license 90 days before your 14th birthday. The law changed in July of '59.
Mr. Mayor, point of order. Will you please have the speaker stay on topic?
The speaker is allowed the floor. Please allow the speaker to finish.
But he's not on topic. We're talking about...
I'm explaining,
That's
Mr.
your
Walker,
opinion.
if you would let me speak, as we let you speak, how this came about, and it applies to all of us.
Mr. Chairman, we don't need a lecture on how it came about. We're talking about this
You're out of order.
ordinance.
He's got the floor. He can speak.
Without order, there's chaos, as I found out driving in Seoul, South Korea. Nobody stayed in their orderly lines of traffic. In here, we need to obey and follow our official rules of decorum, which is Robert's Rules. And I can't say that I agree with all the phraseology here about not. That, tell somebody not. Don't let your child grow up in a no world, always pop in their hands, no, no, no. Explain why. We could change some of these to say that personality should not be involved in discussions. The presiding officer is the presiding officer. If you have a point of order, if it's something the presiding officer has done, state your point of order and how it's referenced in Robert's Rules. This was brought about by one of our citizens saying that we needed to have some order. So I think it's a step in the right direction. And as everything that we ever make a step in the right direction, we've got to do some changes. And it's not going to be approved by everybody every time. So let's start somewhere and move on.
One of the things I want to mention too, this is the Robert's Rules of Order newly revised 11th edition, which is what we approved by ordinance in our ordinance book. If you go to administration and look at the very first page, it'll tell you which one. There's many of these books out there. There's Robert's Rules for Dummies and Robert's Rules for Dummies Simplified and all kinds of others. Most municipalities use that one because it's probably the most in-depth. The most in-depth sometimes is also maybe not the best because it's so complicated. There are a lot of places, and I think they put some of this stuff in their thing. I ended up getting stuff from Lexington School Board, Lexington 5, Lexington 1, City of Durham, City of Charleston, Batesburg, Leesville, Town of Lexington. A lot of these places have Robert's Rules, but then they also go in and take the ones out that they have to deal with the most and put them into a form that they're on that page. That way anybody can go to our ordinance and look it up, and there they are. This thing here that's in the Municipal Association, I'm going to read that real quick. It just says the following conduct may disrupt a meeting and subject the offending member to sanctions under Robert's Rules 11th edition if the member refuses to obey a call to order. Speaking without being recognized by the presiding officer when not in order, which mainly means you can't speak until you're recognized unless it's a point of order or point of information, one of those areas that you can actually interrupt the speaker. Interrupting speakers without proper reason, carrying on a private conversation during a meeting, asking questions or making comments not relevant to the business at hand, involving personalities in comments, making frivolous motions, arguing with the presiding officer, making unnecessary points of order or appeals from the ruling of the chair, making political speeches, and refusing to abide by a legitimate ruling of the presiding officer. These are all things that are mentioned in here. If you want to disrupt a meeting, this is how you do it. That's why I'm taking these things, and instead of saying do these things, I'm basically saying not do these things. If somebody wants to reword those in a better, positive way, by the time we have second reading, that's fine with me. I'm just taking these short things, which are already, again, part of Robert's Rules, and putting them in a format that we know this is not what we're supposed to do unless we want to disrupt a meeting. They're already in there. Whether we adopt them here or not, they're already in our Robert's Rules. They may be more difficult to read because they're in different spots instead of one page in one place. But I think that's what would make it easier for us to follow if they're in a place that we can go and find out.
Point of information. How long we have Robert's Rules as our ordinance? How long has that been in play? How long has Robert's Rules been?
As far as I know, I mean, I got elected in 05. It was here then. And I think it was probably last updated, it's been in our book since maybe the 80s or 90s.
86.
Okay.
But
That's not true.
that's not true.
That's not true. We voted to adopt that.
We had the Gibbons rule of
Right.
which
We voted to adopt that when you became mayor. This particular this particular edition.
It would say in our...
It may be, but you know we did what John Gibbons told us.
Exactly.
Well, there's always been
And it worked.
you can follow them or not follow them.
Yeah.
And I think when you
Right.
have a council
It's a guideline.
that is not going to do these things and interrupt and make frivolous motions and all that, then it's easy to have a meeting where you don't have to stick to the strict rules. The only time it's like anything else, the only time you need laws is when you got criminals. The only time you need rules is when you got people that are not going to abide by them. And that's when they come into place, like playing football. If everybody understands the rules and you got to stay in bounds and all those things, you play the game. If you want to make up your own as you go, then that's where trouble begins. And let's see. I was trying to find that particular. See if I can find it real quick where it tells normally at the end of that, it will show when something was adopted.
I'm sure it was. I'm sure.
Right.
The only point I was making is we never mentioned it.
Right.
And you don't have to as long as everybody is respectful to one another. Once you cross that line, and we have crossed that line, and it's got worse and worse and worse until people have said they don't want to come to our meetings, and people have even said it's getting out of line, y'all need to clean it up. The easiest way is just to go by these simple rules right here of how not to interrupt a meeting or disrupt a meeting and stick to those, then everything is pretty much in line.
I'm ready to call a question.
Okay, good. Go ahead.
All in favor then? Well,
He called for the question.
are we ready to vote though?
You just called for the question, did you not? We have to vote for the question.
Unless we're ready to vote. It looks like everybody's ready to vote. And again, this gets into the same thing that you're talking about. If we're ready to vote, vote. If we want to call a question, vote on that and then vote. We can do that, but if we're ready to vote, just vote.
No, I wouldn't say something else. So,
okay.
But he called for the question.
All right.
So I'm trying to recognize his.
Well,
Well, point of order, Mr. Chairman. According to Robert's rules,
Here we go.
when the question is called, if there's still someone who wishes to speak,
Right.
Second time.
doesn't matter. If someone still wishes to speak on the issue, you cannot call the question.
No, everybody's allowed 2 times to speak after everybody's spoken twice, then a question can be called, and it can't be debated. But if nobody has spoken the second time and
Well,
they
that's
want
the
to.
town rule.
That's a town rule. It's not
That's
Robert's rule.
That is in Robert's rules. In the newly revised, it is.
Newly revised.
Yeah, the one here. The problem with people speaking
More than
back and
twice.
forth, it's hard to keep up with who spoke once and who spoke twice. My recollection is Councilman Walker hasn't spoke but once. I don't know, but I don't think. So if you want to speak again.
He called for the question.
ahead.
I'm
I
recognizing Councilman Pouliot. He called for the question.
But-
So we're going to vote on that. If it fails, then I will speak. If it doesn't,
Presiding officer, if someone hasn't spoke a second time and wishes to, then the question cannot be called because it's out of order. You can only call the question after everybody spoke twice. So, do you want to speak or not?
if
He rescinded the motion.
okay, good. Yes, I'd like to speak on this again. Again, we're talking about decorum amongst us, not the citizens speaking to us. We're talking about the decorum amongst us. And all I'm saying is that I believe that this is totally illegal for you to try to create a dictatorship at the dais as a presiding officer and say that we cannot not do 9 times do things to have a discourse between us, a civil debate between us as council members. That's my point, and that's what I'd like to say. Thank you.
Ready to vote? All in favor then of first reading of ordinance 1918, do so with show of hands. All opposed? Next is ordinance 1919, and I'll make a motion for that. Is there a second?
I'll second.
You-
Or you just seconded it? I'm sorry.
May I make an observation before we begin?
Yes.
We've lost half the audience because we talk too much. We've lost all these people who came to, because we carry on, and I'm as guilty as everybody else. But we need to be more succinct, more to the point, and go to the next one. That's my opinion. Go right ahead, Mayor.
This one has to do with getting rid of the sentence that's in there now and replacing it with this sentence, and then also changing the 10 minutes to 3.
Okay.
And this one could be changed. There's some stuff in here that I think probably does need to be changed since I've wrote this and since Renee's typed it up. I'm going to probably make another change by the time it comes to second reading. But basically says that anybody who wants to speak on council can call the municipal clerk 2 hours before the meeting starts, which would be 5 o'clock on Tuesday before she leaves and everything, or they can sign up when they get here. This says prior to the beginning of the meeting. I'm going to probably change that says if they want to speak to agenda items, they got to sign up prior to the meeting. If they want to speak to the other one at the end of the meeting, they just got to sign up by the time we get to the last item on your business or whatever. So that if they come in late, they can still sign up. But I'll have to figure out how to word that. Anyway, that's what that one has to do with. Who seconded?
I did.
Oh,
Did I second or you?
It's fine.
Okay. This, I actually agree with this. And I do have a question, though, about the sign-up time. It seems to me that if a citizen is going to address us on a particular subject, we have 2 places in our agenda where they can do that. The beginning on agenda items only, and then at the end on basically anything they want to talk about. What is it says here that you must, on the sign-up sheet, must contain your name, address, and the issue and the matter that the residents want to address. So at the beginning of the meeting, if they want to address something, they need to put that, what they're going to address after the meeting in that second part? Or are we going to have another?
I don't think, the second part ought to be whatever.
Yeah, but they have to, at the beginning of the meeting, they have to fill this sheet out and tell us what they want to address at that second opportunity to address council? Is that what we're telling them they have to do before the meeting? I mean, if that's it, I mean, that's.
Right now, the way it's written, yes, they'd have to sign up before the meeting started.
To tell us what they want to talk to.
On both.
On both,
Yeah.
the beginning and the after.
And that's why I say I think I want to change that one. I just got to figure out how to word it, that if you want to speak to whatever that
Agenda items, yeah.
Agenda items, item 8, 8, then you got to sign up at the beginning of the meeting. If you want to speak to item 11, then you got to sign up by the last item in whatever new business is, somewhere in that item there.
Right.
5 minutes before it starts or whatever. I got to figure out how to word that. So,
could we move on and accept this and amend it?
Yeah.
For second reading?
Well, that's what I was going to do, is try
Figure
to
out
amend it.
how
come
we
up
can
with something
change
better.
this?
Yeah, and again, I agree with it. It's just that it's a little, to me, a little confusing.
Yeah, that's right.
On that part. And the other thing is, the second part where we changed 10 minutes to 3 minutes, I'm in agreement with that. But unfortunately, a lot of the citizens don't have the preparation and the public speaking ability that we have. They can be succinct and we're succinct, to be succinct and quick and be able to address our thoughts in 3 minute time frame. So we have to be able to allow those citizens that don't have that speaking ability the time to get their point across if they're not rambling and if they're not, going on and on and on after 3 minutes. So you need to make sure you clarify that it's changed to 3 minutes, but at the discretion of the chair can be extended or cut off at 3 minutes. I mean, I think that's a reasonable accommodation for the lay citizens that may not have the speaking ability to be succinct.
There is one of these, and I can't remember which one, because I have these here that y'all got, but I've got the other ones that Renee gave me a long time ago that were, some of them were just very, very, very wordy and whatever. Durham actually charges their council members a fee if they get called out of order and blah, 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 blah. I didn't put that one in there. But there is a phrase in here where it's up to the chair or the presiding officer or whatever.
To extend the time or something?
The problem with that is, and I'll just say it like this, even though I probably shouldn't. Why would you have a problem with me saying somebody's out of order for making a frivolous motion, but then I'm going to give person A 3 more minutes? It all kind of goes back to that.
Well, that's a different ordinance, but here I'm saying, again, the citizens addressing council may not be as astute in public speaking. They can make their point in 3 minutes. If they're making valid points and they're not rambling and they're not going around and around, or they're not reading the dictionary or reading the Constitution word for word in order to take up time, I'm willing to allow them a little more time than 3 minutes, or not give them, at the 3 minute mark, cut them off. I want to hear from the citizens. So that's all I want to do, is say that we have to be, no, 3 minutes is fine, but have the discretion or the ability for the chair or even the council, since our form of government is strong council, to let the citizens continue to speak if we want to continue to hear from past that 3 minute. That's all. And we make that decision on a case-by-case basis.
Any more?
So you want to take it back and work on it, and we can vote on it, or you want to go ahead?
Well, we can go ahead and do first, and then I'll make some. I just gotta. And did you put all this in everybody's thing, or just on paper? The people that got.
I got it. Yeah, I got a copy of that.
Oh, okay.
Paper copy. Everybody got it.
Oh, okay. read over those because there are some sentences in there that speak to that. Some of them just say presiding officer, some of them say presiding officer or council.
Yeah, I remember seeing that.
Something to that effect, because, and even some of these other things, if the presiding officer doesn't call something out of order or tell somebody to shut up or whatever, then the council could. Anyway, all in favor then of first reading of 1919, do so with show of hands. All opposed? And next one is 1920. This is the one that has to do with the public and the audience, so to speak. Again, all this stuff came out of all these things, plus maybe some of those other ones that I had. Tried to pick out the stuff that's in there and word it, or in a way that I thought was worded good. I'll make a motion for first reading. Is there a second?
I second.
And this can be read, but it basically says the stuff that we were talking about. I know Mark had mentioned at a meeting or so back, and I've heard it from other people as well, that they didn't want to come to some of our council meetings because things were getting, and not just up here, but they felt like if they were in support of something or not in support of something, that the majority of the people in the audience were, that they were kind of being intimidated and that kind of stuff. So they felt like not speaking. And I think it's important for us to hear from both sides of every issue, the people that are for, the people that are against. In some places, I think it's the town of Lexington, if I remember correctly, when they do their sign-up sheets, you have to put on there you're opposed or support, whatever thing is. And in actuality, in this book right here, anytime we speak, we're supposed to say right away that we're for something or opposed to it. We don't do that because we should be able to figure that out somewhere in the conversation. But when they have a public hearing or when they have a large people sign up, a large amount of people sign up, they allow 5 to speak for, 5 to speak against, 5 to speak for, 5 to speak against. And when after they've kind of heard, then they call it quits. One of the things in here only has 15 minutes for the whole presentation by citizens altogether. They cut it off after 15 minutes. 3 people or 5 people at 3 minutes, and it's done. I disagree with some of that. I think people took the time to come here. They ought to be able to speak. But that's where this came from. Again, it came out of all this stuff. A lot of it has to do with municipalities that's had troubles in the past, and they have tried to come up with something. And these are the, I'm going to call them watered down, simplified, not so restrictive. There are some that get very restrictive. And they also get very restrictive about what they call a town matter and what they call a town issue. If you're not speaking on a town matter or town issue, then presiding officer calls you out of order. Those are big gray areas that it's a fine line. But anyway, that's where that came from. Who seconded that?
I did.
Mark. Okay.
Well, I'm good.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because we have the whole right-hand section here is taking a nap for a while.
Yeah.
Poor Caterly.
So anybody else who wants to?
No, we need to vote.
All right. All in favor then of 1920 first reading, do so with show of hand. Next is, well, we did that one, we did that one, we did that one.
Item L.
Item J. Next is the approval to perform a traffic study for property at 7407.
I withdraw that.
Oh.
Thank you, Barry.
Next is the intergovernmental agreement with the town of Irmo and City of Columbia on the interstate.
I so move.
And a
Second.
Any discussion?
This is the way it's been the past. Yeah, that's what when I read it, I thought this is the same. Yeah.
And it basically just says, we cut the grass, they pay for the water, and That's kind of the gist.
3 of the quadrants are in Columbia. 1 is in Irmo, right?
That's correct on Lake Murray, but
And
they
they
cut the
pa-
grass. We take care of the trees.
That's right. And they provide the water for the sprinklers.
Free water, and then
Free
they
water,
give us a
yeah.
check for our labor.
And we make it pretty. Whit does.
Yes, he does.
That entrance to Irmo is
It's gorgeous.
one of the nicest ever. Really is.
And we've been copied a lot too. When we went to that place, we went Greenville. If you notice,
Yep.
going up the interstate, a
Yep.
lot of places are starting to.
Yep.
And any more discussion? All in favor then of the approval of the intergovernmental agreement with the City of Columbia, do so with show of hands. Next is the approval for a referendum. These referendums I put on here, and I'll talk about each one as we go over it. I'll make a motion for approval of should the town overturn the no parking, number L.
I second.
The reason I put that on there, there's been a lot of discussion about that.
It's a good idea.
And I think we can, we got an election coming up. We can put these things on the agenda and let the people vote on those. And let
Referendum.
yay or nay, whether they want them or not, or whether they think we ought to open
On the agenda or the ballot?
on the ballot.
Ballot,
And, yeah, and,
like the chickens.
yeah, like we did the chicken referendum years ago, and this will allow people to tell us yea or nay. And then after that, kind of like the chicken thing too, they can nay it, we can yea it, they can yea it, we can nay it. But at least we hear it from the people, what they think about all
I
that.
think it's
So
a good idea.
that's why it's on here. Who seconded that? You did.
Me, I did. I think it's a good idea. It gave us a lot of information about the chickens, which was a matter of concern to quite a few people. And this will tell us if we're right or wrong about parking. And I think it's,
And it kind of resolved that matter in a way.
yeah, this is, their opinion counts.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Wait a minute, I want to speak on this. Mr. Mayor, we filled this council chamber standing room only, what was it, 2 years ago, 3 years ago? No, 4 years ago, because it was before the election. It was 2 years ago, before our election. The citizens of Irmo filled this council chamber standing room only to oppose, and I thought it was the majority, to oppose the parking ordinance. And what did the three of y'all do? Y'all ignored them. Y'all went and passed the law. And then Mr. Pouliot had a great idea that, we'll waive the third reading of this until after the election for the new council to make the final decision. And, well, after the election, the same council was here before the election, and then we went and to pass it after the election. So my question is, you didn't listen to the people then, and now you want to put a non-binding referendum on the ballot so that you can not listen to the people again is a waste of time. And if you do decide to listen to the people, which they told you before the election and before we passed third reading that they didn't want this ordinance, if you decide to now listen to the people, is the town prepared to reimburse every citizen that made accommodations so they wouldn't get a $1,087 parking fine? Is the town prepared to? I have a neighbor who spent $7,000 on his parking pad to accommodate this ordinance. Now, this neighbor was financially fit to do that, and he did it because he wanted to make his property look good, and he had some drainage issues anyway. Is the town prepared to give this neighbor back his $5,000, $6,000 that he spent on this parking pad to accommodate this ordinance that this council passed, that the majority of this council passed? That's the question I have. So if you want to put a referendum on the ballot, put that referendum on there. Yeah, do you want to repeal this parking ordinance? And do you want the town of Irmo to reimburse all the citizens that spent money to accommodate this ordinance that you guys passed?
Anyone else?
I just want to understand that if someone in the town, a neighbor, has spent $7,000 on something, and it's a neighbor within Archer's Court, I believe you have an HOA that.
We do.
Yeah, so if he spent the money based on what is required by his HOA.
No, sir. No, sir. He spent money based on the fact that he would have got a ticket if he parked on his grass, per our ordinance.
But per the HOA, you can't park on your grass.
No. The HOA doesn't require a $1,000 fine if you do park on your grass. The town of Irmo did.
I think you're grasping at straws.
I'm not grasping at straws. The town of Irmo requires.
That we passed allowed somebody to put pine straw. So if somebody put a $7,000 parking pad instead of a $500 or $200 or whatever, that was their decision. That wasn't the town's decision.
But that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying, are we prepared to reimburse somebody who spent $7,000 or somebody who spent $500? Are we prepared to reimburse every citizen? And in fact, it was 500, I believe it was 528 abatement notices that y'all wrote initially. Those are 528 people that did something to accommodate them for this ordinance.
We found 528 people parking on the grass. I think we wrote less than 100 or something abatements, and we only had 2 tickets. Yeah. So there wasn't 500 abatements.
Okay, so it was 100 abatements?
Something like that, I think. I can't remember.
I don't remember either, but I knew it was a number that was greater than 0. And those people that had to pay.
Less than 5,000.
Well, but it doesn't matter. Are you prepared to reimburse every citizen that made accommodations to not get a $1,087 ticket?
Well,
and if you're not prepared to do that, then you don't need to be putting a referendum after the fact that you've already passed the law on the ballot to ask them, well, we passed the law, we would have gave you a $1,000 ticket, and now we want you to tell us if you want to keep the law.
We didn't give anybody a $1,000 ticket, did we?
You just said 2 people paid fines.
No, 2 people got tickets.
Okay.
Nobody paid the full amount. One of them had $500.
One of them was 50.
And I want to say that was like $50.
Yeah.
So are you prepared to reimburse those citizens that paid the $500 ticket and the $60 ticket? Are you prepared to reimburse people?
Okay, there's history on this in the town. That's all of.
Yeah, and also,
it had to
when
do
you
with garbage.
make a comment about listening to the people, you can sit there and argue all day long that we didn't listen to the people, but maybe we didn't listen to the same people, and that's an argument out there right now. I think I listened to the people. I think I listened.
Whoa! There was standing room only in this chamber. Standing room only. You couldn't find a seat. To me, those are the people that were concerned.
People that live in town. There's about 8,000 registered voters. There's more people than can meet in.
They couldn't fit in. 8,000 people couldn't fit in here.
So
the 80 or 90 people that showed up that night was telling you, we represent
80 or 90.
Right, we represent the people that were against this parking ordinance.
Against, but there's also other people in here that weren't at the meeting. They have also spoken.
They were for it.
Yeah.
Where were they at?
They were at their homes telling us that they're for this. They've been out telling us that for years. That's why this is on the order.
This vaporware.
So that we can see. All right, fine. Put it on there. I think the people are going to come and tell us no.
Well, okay.
Okay. So
well, if people tell you no, but you didn't listen, it's a non-binding referendum. The people can tell you yes, the people can tell you no, and you still can ignore them like you did it 2 years ago.
And the majority will say no. And then
unless we got a new council on board, and then they might listen to them. But,
like
you know.
The chicken thing, we'll find out.
No, we're not talking about chickens. We're talking about parking ordinance.
Because the chicken thing resolved that matter. People came to our meeting.
It did resolve it. We didn't vote on it.
They were the majority, and they turned out not to be. That was the simple truth.
No, they didn't.
Yeah,
they said that no, they didn't. We had a question about it.
That was your question. You put it on there, and it was resolved. People said no chickens. So this is a good way to resolve this. Put it on there, let people vote on it, be done with it.
Okay, let's do that.
Well, I make a motion that we add to this that the town overturn the no parking ordinance or no parking in the yard ordinance, and if the town votes on the referendum to overturn it, the town will reimburse every citizen that spent money with a proven receipt that they spent money to accommodate this ordinance that y'all passed that nobody wanted because you think it's good.
Well, okay, I'm good.
Whatever I said, write that down. You know what I said?
No, don't write that down. Don't.
Is that a second?
No.
Okay, that motion dies for lack of second.
Okay. Years ago, when garbage was the issue,
Right.
people were buying little trucks to take their garbage to the dump because Irmo did not have a garbage plan that they could accept or that the people wanted. About a year or two after everybody bought all their little trucks, they adopted a garbage plan. Now, you might remember it, Bunny.
I remember that. I was here.
Nobody got reimbursed for the trucks. And there were a lot of people mad. But I don't think we can afford to reimburse people, but I would like to know what they think. I would.
But we passed the ordinance already. Okay, so why go back and ask the citizens, well, how about we just repeal the ordinance like I tried to do several times?
We've tried to do that, but I think it's a good idea, but I'm going to hush now because
Anybody else?
they're up from their nap already.
We ready to vote? Are you up? All in favor then of item L, putting that on the referendum, should the town overturn the no parking, do so a show of hands. All opposed. Next one is the approval of referendum question on the ballot, should the town bring back a property tax in order to approve or to provide more services, examples, road repairs, street sweeping, hiring police officers and staff, etc. I'll make a motion for that. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
And the reason this one's on here too, we have heard probably for about a year on all the things the town should be doing, like more police officers and more road repair, potholes, street lights, all those things, street sweeping, everything else. These are all some things good, worthy. But we also have a limited budget. The only way we're going to continue to keep providing more and more services is if we have more and more revenue. I wouldn't vote for this, but at the same time, I think we need to put it out there, settle this matter for all, let people speak to it, address it, and if it comes back that everybody wants to pay more taxes in order to get some more services, with the understanding that if they do vote and if council approves property tax, any council can change it and spend the money however they want to, whenever they want to, and it doesn't have to go to none of this stuff. But I think it's a way of resolving this, and once and for all, if they say no, then that's that. We know.
I second. Let's vote.
I think that one's already been seconded, and Julius did.
Okay.
Yeah. Any?
Well, I was here when we were paying property tax, and we still weren't doing road repairs because the roads are owned by the counties.
Yeah.
Last time I checked.
And that goes way back. I have used quickset cement to patch holes at the intersection of Bolter's Lock and Shillingford because I got tired of bouncing my front end on them. But I don't think anybody's going to be in favor of raising taxes.
We'll find out.
But we'll find out.
Let's put it
That's
on.
why I seconded it.
Good. Let's vote.
Any more discussion?
No.
Yeah. Am I recognized? Should the town bring back property tax in order to provide more services? Example, road repairs, street sweeping, hire more police, indoor staff, etc. You failed to mention one possible use for more taxes, and that's to handle the pending DOJ lawsuit that we may lose. It will cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. We certainly will have to pay that, and it will certainly probably have to have a tax increase to do it. But Mayor, this is, I can't believe, this is hugely unpopular. why would we need to charge our citizens to create a highway department to take care of the roads that we don't take care of? We all have a DOT and county that taxes our citizens and take care of the roads now. So are you saying that you want to create a Irmo highway department, tax the citizens to create a highway department to take care of our own roads, and then the citizens are taxed already by the county and state to take care of the state and county roads? I mean, that's what you're basically asking. All we need to do is to build a relationship with the county and the state DOT and be able to pick the phone up and say, hey, Royal Tower is in bad repair and we need you to move it up on your list of roads that need to be repaired. Or county, such and such road in the county is in bad disrepair. Hey, how about moving that up on your list of C funds that we're already paying and have that road repaved or resurfaced? I don't think we need to be taxing our citizens for a pending DOJ lawsuit that we might lose, or create a highway department within the town of Irmo.
I'll respond to that since you mentioned my name. First of all, I don't think we need to raise taxes. I think some of us just need to tell people on a Facebook page no. When they asked about more street lights and when they asked about potholes, you just need to step up to the plate and say, somebody else does that. That's what happens. Instead of telling them we're going to do all that, and then we come to meetings and we got to discuss street lights and fixing potholes and all that kind of stuff. Secondly, I want to say you just made a statement that you are certain we're going to have to pay a DOJ lawsuit.
Yeah.
You don't know that. I think we're going to win. That's a debatable thing. That's an issue.
But wait a minute. We've already lost. Our premiums for our insurance has increased by $150,000. $150,000.
No, that's not correct.
Yes, it is. What did you tell me, Bob? What was the increase in premiums?
It went up $34,000 for this year from our other cases that we had. It hadn't gone up for this because this case is closed.
How much is our premiums now?
$160,000 a year.
Thank you.
But they haven't gone up 150. They are.
We are paying $160,000 for a lawsuit that we had last year, and when the DOJ gets through with us, we probably end up paying more.
No.
This isn't for that.
Our premiums are $160,000.
We haven't, that hadn't been settled yet.
No. The previous lawsuit,
Our premiums
And what was
are
the
about
previous
$160 a
when
year.
the latter child got killed.
Oh,
Based
yeah,
on that.
that was in there, and yeah.
The lawsuit with the other thing was about 30,000 increase. Yeah.
Added to what we were already paying. That's why I say we're at 160. But
Okay.
If we had no lawsuits, we'd probably still be paying, what, 80,000 to 100,000?
So it went up $50,000?
went up 34,000 exact.
Okay.
Yeah.
It wasn't just for that.
My point, it went up $30,000 is a big chunk of money.
Yeah.
That's a salary for an entry-level cop.
Yeah.
Okay? And
And a lot of that increase is because of lawsuits.
again,
Other municipalities, and ours go up based on those as well, because we're in a pool. Yeah. So even if we don't get sued, it's still going to go up because other people get sued and we're in a pool.
yeah, but
Insurance, that's the way.
I'm afraid of the DOJ
Well,
when
we'll
they get
just have
through
to
with
wait
us.
for them to make that.
I mean, call it like it is. If we lose this lawsuit, we're going to have to figure out how to pay it. And the only way we're going to be able to do that is to have a tax increase.
And businesses like you just voted against help pay that in their business license.
Well, I voted against it, but it passed. So
And at the same time, you started
What's the
off
problem?
saying you were certain that we're going to have to pay, and in your next statement, you said we might lose. So it sounds like
I am certain we have to pay. DOJ, I don't think DOJ is going to waste their time if they don't know what they're doing, if they're not confident that they can prevail.
I think they do.
Hey, call me Santa Claus, but I'm scared of the federal government when they come after you.
Well, we'll see. Anyway, it has nothing to do with all this,
I'm not
but
afraid of this.
Sure it does. Well, whatever.
let's put it out there.
I'm done.
People want all this
I'm
stuff.
done.
See what they
Ready
say.
for the vote.
I think they're going to vote no.
Well, no. I'm ready to put that on there.
I think they will too.
Yeah, yeah.
But then that's the answer. That's the question.
Yeah.
We can tell them we ain't got the money. And that's the truth. All in favor of the approval of a referendum, should the town bring back property tax in order to provide more services? All in favor, do so with show of hands. All opposed? And there's one more, isn't it, or is that?
Should the town approve?
Yeah, yeah. They approve the hospitality tax. We've had a lot of talk about that. We've talked about it, gone around, had meetings, and we're still sitting here. So I'm going to put that out there and put it on there and let people tell us. If they
I
want to pay
think
for
that's a
that or
good
not.
idea. Good idea.
We'll hear it. I'm going to make a motion. Is there a second?
Yes, there is.
Any discussion?
You made the motion, you're not going to say anything? You seconded it?
Yeah.
Can I speak now? You know, I owned a restaurant for 13, 14 years, and we got hit with a small business or a tax, a hospitality tax, in the middle of my operation of our business. And it was a small tax, 2%, and yeah, we passed it on to our customers, but it was a burden on me and Miss Susan, who was the bookkeeper, to keep up with sending the City of Columbia a check for all of our proceeds, revenue for that particular month. It was a burden for us to increase that accounting. And for us to pass a tax on the citizens, small businesses, and only a small percentage of the small business, the restaurants, is to me totally dissuades people and makes them don't want to open businesses in the area. We need to increase our tax base and not increase the taxes on our base. Let me say that again. We need to increase our tax base and not to increase the taxes on our base. So for us to even put that question out there, we as a council don't even need to do that. We know what the burdens we are putting on our businesses. We need to be in the job of creating more businesses to come in town.
And I agree, and I vote for them, and I just voted to approve one tonight coming in town. In fact, two. One is getting annexed in.
And now you want to increase the taxes
No,
on that.
I didn't say I wanted to increase. I said I
You're
wanted
putting it on the agenda.
I
You're
wanna
putting it on
hear
a
from the people
referendum.
about that, because there's a lot of people that keep saying we ought to do concerts in the park, we ought to do this, we ought to hire social media, we ought to do all this stuff.
We have a social media.
But if you put it on if you put the referendum on, you obviously want to do it.
No, I don't. That's not obvious.
No,
I
it's
just want
not.
to hear from the people. You
my
say you want
God.
to hear from the people. I say I want to hear from the people. We just got different methods. Put this on there and let people talk.
You want to hear from the people, you want to put a tax on the businesses.
I didn't say I want to put a tax on it.
You just,
No.
you're putting it, whatever.
I'm going to vote against it when it comes up on the referendum.
Well, how about vote against it tonight?
I want to hear from the people. So, I think we ought to hear from the people. You want to hear from them? We want to hear from them. Let's hear from them. Handle
Yeah,
it.
let's hear from the people.
Any more discussion? All in favor then of the referendum, should the town approve a hospitality tax to pay for more tourism related, do so a show of hands. All opposed. So we're at the end, presentation by citizens. Anyone who, actually we got people signed up. Elizabeth and Philip Jones. Oh, that's right, you already spoke, okay.
And they sat here for the whole meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bless you.
And I guess Anita, that's with, okay.
Yeah.
Mike Ward.
Hi again. If it's all right with y'all, I'm going to speak on behalf of a citizen that had to leave, that could not stay. He lives on Minehead Court. His name is Richard Harris. He wanted to present something really simple to the council. It's a question: why is no vending allowed in the town of Irmo? He's part of an organization called Vendors United. They support vendors nationwide. And if you want any kind of reference to a precedence, they helped change the laws and the rules in Charleston, South Carolina that allowed vendors to come into Charleston and actually set up.
Are you talking about vending machines?
No, I'm talking about hot dog stands, food trucks.
Oh, food
those
trucks.
types of
Okay,
things.
okay.
And I'm not going to mention the other gentleman's name, but there's another business in town that have had recent conversations with food truck type of things. And so they just wanted me to share that information with you, let you think it over, and maybe have a discussion about it.
Well, it's actually in the new ordinance thing, so when we vote on that, it'll be coming up.
What new ordinance?
That thing that Bob gave us a couple weeks ago.
But
Yeah, I just wanted to bring it up.
That,
New
yeah.
zoning.
or zoning, or, okay.
Yeah, it's all in that.
But we're not gonna talk about that
Not
until next
there
election,
are some
right?
changes.
Till after the election, right?
Go ahead.
I can talk again. Thank you, sir. If I do want to put this, we had a lot of discussion on changing a neighborhood commercial to a general commercial zoning. And I thought a lot about it. If it was already general commercial, we would have not had any discussion here tonight because they would have already been allowed to move ahead with that. But with other projects, for example, the golf cart store, when we look to change the zoning of those few acres, one of the things that I heard come from council many times was talking about the plans. What do they plan on doing? How do they plan on operating? I can't find anything in our ordinances that forces a business to come to council and get permission to actually be a business in our town before they're allowed to do anything. So I just want to make a recommendation that if we do want to control what businesses are going to build, what they're going to build in our town, what they're allowed, everything, maybe you should change those ordinances. Otherwise, we want development in our town. We want those businesses to come here. I understand there's traffic concerns. I can't imagine as a business owner myself that a developer and a large corporation, which I presume is what this is coming in over off Lake Murray Boulevard, I just can't imagine that they have come off half-cocked and have no idea what they're doing, that they haven't done their own studies to see how much this is even going to cost them. I just can't imagine that. It's not an HGTV flip this house special. And Councilman Pouliot, you were right. I've made this statement here. I've made it a couple times over the last year that I've been coming up to the lectern, but this is one of the worst conducted business meetings that I've ever attended. And I applaud the fact that we have looked at implementing some of Robert's rules to help control the meeting, but after the disregard to what already exists and the powers that already be, what we saw here tonight gives me no hope for implementing those rules and them actually being followed. So you'll have a good night.
Thank you. And Eric Sickinger.
So I know I signed up originally with something else in mind, but honestly, throughout the course of this meeting, I forgot. So I'll use that to bring about my other point. Please just be pithy. Like, just make your statement before or against. We all here, I don't, hold on, let me pull that back. I get the impression from the people in the crowd that they don't want to sit through meetings that take a long time. And it feels, the feeling I get, and I'll say it that way so I don't put words in anyone else's mouth. Feeling I get is that something that could be said in 1 minute seems to take 5 or 10, and that's really not necessary. Just make your statement, get over with it, and let's get on with business. Thanks.
Thank you. And Art and Brenda McLean.
Good evening. I'm sorry, guys. Now I'm tearing it up, trying to just bring it down. Okay. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to tear it up. Okay, so basically, I wanted to bring something to your attention. I'm not sure if you guys know about this or not. It has to do with Tyler's Sanitation. July 1st at 3:45, I called Tyler's Sanitation to schedule a bulk pickup. I missed July's, so August was then scheduled. I was asked what was being picked up. I advised them broken down trampoline parts and broken down aluminum shed. A month later, on Friday, I called them again to confirm my Monday's pickup. We were on the list again. Tyler confirmed what was being picked up, and I told them again. Tyler's basically told us just make sure to stack it neatly. When I came home on Monday, it was not picked up, rather it was tagged, stating it was construction material. At 6:07 that evening I called. I left a very detailed voicemail of my dissatisfaction of service and proper training of the people scheduling that bulk pickup. I left my number in case they wanted to contact me. Tuesday at 4:45, I called Tyler's and I spoke to the girl who answers the phone to ask if my voicemail was reviewed and what is considered to be construction material. I'm sorry, guys, I'm losing my place. She didn't know the answer to either of those questions. She's going to get with her supervisor tomorrow to see if the garbage will be picked up or not. I was asked to call her back if the supervisor did not get back with me to confirm yes or no on that pickup. On Wednesday, the next day, I called to see what the supervisor said. The same girl I talked to yesterday, she sighed. Did he not get back with you? I told her no. Again, she said, let me get with him to remind him to get back with me. Instead of him calling me, he called the Irmo Police Department to request that I be served an abatement notice. Irmo Police Department obeyed their request, stating the reason I was being served is because I called Tyler's Sanitation after the supervisor had already spoke to me. I never talked with that supervisor. Only the girl answering the phone. The ordinance officer asked me for my phone number, saying he's going to get with Tyler's supervisor and get him to call me back. It was then that I got a call back from the supervisor. I asked Tyler's Sanitation supervisor if it was protocol to call Irmo Police on the residents when they called Tyler. He very quickly replied, yep. I told him it was very dirty and it was inappropriate for him to treat his customers that way by calling the police when we simply call your office for answers to questions. I told him it could have been avoided had he just simply called me back or provided his staff with knowledge on how to assist me. I did have a very cordial conversation with him. I expressed to him my concerns of training the people, answering the phones, when we tell them what is being picked up because they simply asked me. They should not be scheduling bulk pickups with the residents if they don't plan on picking it up. By what authority does the town of Irmo and Tyler Sanitation have in place where Tyler Sanitation can call the Irmo Police Department and get them to serve an abatement notice, and it is simply served to any particular resident?
Do you have a copy of the abatement notice?
Not with me. 137, zoning. So I didn't know if maybe you guys had an agreement with them, because he was very, very quick when I asked him, is this protocol? Yep.
Bob, can I see a copy of their abatement notice that they received, please?
We're going to take care of this.
And can you get Bob's
We're gonna
phone
take
number
care
where
of
he can call you too? Because he'll need to call you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sergeant Ringer already has her information.
Oh,
Yeah, he did.
Me
Let me
and
just
me
say-
and Brenda have had a conversation
Yes.
with PD about this, so we're already we're already handling it. Thank you.
All right.
We got it. Unless y'all want to look into it a little more.
I just want to say, Mr. Brown, if you would, have a conversation with Tyler. Tell him that we had citizens doing the right thing, calling for a pickup, then going beyond that, calling and confirming with them
Yes.
that they were going to pick it up. Obviously, they didn't put it out until they knew that it was going to be picked up. And then for them
Correct.
to get an abatement notice is wrong.
Yeah.
And that's not what we're paying for. Plain and simple.
And yeah, I'm just going to let you know, too, that I felt very singled out. There are 3 people in my neighborhood since the bulk pickup, which the August bulk pickup was August 5th, I believe. It was Monday. Since that day, there are 3 people in my neighborhood who still have junk out by the road that have not been abated, apparently, because as of today, I took a picture on the way here. Their stuff is still on the curb. I was told to remove mine. Why not theirs? I felt very singled out. I felt it was very dirty. Something's not right, guys. I'm just saying. I have pictures from the 5th till tonight. I've got my records here. So I'm just going to let you know.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Art.
And one of the issues too, Bob, we need to probably get a better clarification from Tyler.
What they pick up.
What is construction material? Because I know we had an issue not too long ago where somebody had taken like 2x4s and a round thing that you put a fence post on or a mailbox on, and they had it stacked behind their house, and it rotted, so they took it out to the road. Now, one of them might have been over 4 foot long, I don't know, but one of them was broken, and the rest of them were short. But they wouldn't pick that up because that was construction material. And, I know it's not yard trash as far as limbs, but it still isn't construction material because it was just junk wood.
Right.
I think we need to have a better clarification of what is.
I'll check, but if it was a full metal schedule taken apart, that would be constructed, but trampoline wouldn't.
Yeah, but if they said put it out there, they said put it out there.
Right.
They shouldn't have said put it out there.
How did trampoline turn into construction trash? How did trampoline turn into construction trash?
No.
Yeah, it shouldn't be. Unless, but like I say, if they told them to pick it up, then it shouldn't have been.
Yeah, I want to see that abatement notice.
I just want to start by leading off. Tyler's did the same thing to me on the 13th of the month. Hey, Bob. I called ahead of time, told them there would be a lot of trash outside. It was all bagged properly. They came by and ripped my bags open, left the trash across the lawn, and then I was abated at 7 p.m. that evening. I emailed Bob to let him know, which I have right here, that I had made proper arrangements. I received an email back that told me to stop harassing Tyler's, that it was not yard trash. I know it wasn't yard trash. I set the pickup up with Tyler's, with Keegan or Keelan, because I have his cell phone number. They did not come pick it up. When I got home and found it tossed all over my yard, called Tyler's. They said they'd come back and pick it up. And at 7 p.m., Miss Pat called me while we were out to dinner as a family to let me know Stokes was in my front yard, giving me an abatement. First abatement in 13 years at that address. For the record, 318 Lord Howe Road is still my primary residence. Not sure for how long that will be, but I came tonight first and foremost to thank the police department. You guys have been wonderful, especially you, Peterly. We did purchase a second home just outside of town limits for the protection of my family and my animals. So I find it very comical that tonight you speak about intimidation of the people who are for this trio who has banded together and is running in the election together as well, because those of us who have come here and spoken out, which is the American way, are the only ones who have been targeted. They're the only ones who have been intimidated. And honestly, we purchased a second property before I came home to find a child dead. That's how serious this has gotten. People know that I purchased a second property who I have nothing to do with. They announced it on Facebook. People know there was not a for sale sign in my front yard that worked for this town. People know how to manipulate cameras and come and mess with my car and kill my dog and steal my son's bike and put it on the only route that I drive every morning in the middle of the road for me to find. Couldn't have rode it there. It wasn't a kid. It had flat tires. That's an adult. So let's not talk about intimidation of the supporters who are afraid to come here, because it got to a point where I was afraid to not carry walking around my own house. And for what? Because I disagree. People who are running for council are being threatened. Oh, yeah. He's in the room. It's been all over Facebook. It's not a secret. We call this a business meeting, but yet no one acts professional. The only thing that has been constant in this town and unbiased, and honestly the best word I can figure out to use is not corrupt, the police department. And I thank them, because y'all don't influence them. Yes, I got abated, probably from the, as y'all call him, unofficial council member being turned in, or maybe Tyler's called and turned it in like they did on this neighbor. But thank God the police don't let you control them. They still do what's right. So by the time the next meeting comes, I may no longer be Irmo proper and have an address to announce when I get up here, but I don't really need to announce it because for some reason y'all know it by heart. But I'm not going anywhere. Irmo's always been my home. It will always be my home. I just made sure to be just outside of it so I don't have to obey your stupid ordinances anymore. And for the record, I spent $500 on my parking pad, Barry, because the mulch that was the free option created ruts in my yard. So then we had to get crush and run. So I'll take my $500 back, and Bob has the receipt already. Y'all have a good night.
Thank you. And no discussions?
Another citizen.
Oh.
I'm Michelle Carpenter, 112 London Pride. So I'm just going to talk about this referendum you put on here. And I'm kind of going to touch on what Barry said. We packed this room 3-4 times. We packed this room full of people, standing room only. And now, because of the election, you put this referendum on here that it's not even going to count. No matter which way we vote, it's not even going to count. You got some nerve. You really do. And the decisiveness that you three have created in this town is unbelievable. And the threatening of people running for council, that's wrong. And you're not going to intimidate us. That's what you're doing. You're trying to intimidate us, and it's not going to happen. And there's something else I had to say. But the trash in my neighborhood on London Pride, there's at least 2 houses that have had trash in their front yard, I don't know, a month and a half, and it's still there. And you're abating people. How come they haven't been abated? You know what I'm saying? It's trash in their front yard. It's 2 beds and a bunch of trash. And I don't understand why they haven't picked it up, but it's been there forever, and I don't understand why they haven't been abated. Yeah, I sent you the picture. I don't understand it, but so I don't know why is this referendum going on here? What is your so what if you get what if we vote no? Are you gonna repeal it? No, because you don't listen to us. You say you listen to us, but you don't. You not once have listened to anything that we have come here and said. Not once. You can't say that you have. You haven't. It's always 2 against 3. Always. Always. There's going to be some change in November. Those 3 gentlemen back there, they're going to make some change here because y'all are going to be out of here.
Do I have permission to speak?
You're at the podium if you want to speak.
Well, I thought I had to
your
wait for
name
you.
and address for the record.
Yes, Ms. Pat, you have permission to speak.
Well, thank you, Mr. Walker. I'm Patricia Witt, and I live on Minehead Road. And I just want to let you know I appreciate all the support that Brandy and her family has given me over the 15 years that they've been my neighbors. And I know because she came to bat for me about the DOJ case and everything else, she's been taking a lot of guff. It is true about her dog getting killed. And my beautiful cattle dog, Toby, somebody tried to kidnap him 2 weeks ago on Sunday. So don't tell me that we're delirious. What they did, he wears a collar and a harness. He was at the fence and they picked him up like this. And luckily I left it loose enough and he slipped right out. And if I had seen them, I'm telling you, I don't know what I would have done, because I love that dog because he's my family. He knows Barry, he knows Bob, he knows Mr. Wade comes over and puts some rods up. So there's just things that don't make sense here. You know what I'm saying? But I want to thank the Clarksons. They've been good neighbors. And I'm sorry that all this disagreement, because she tried to help me, I'm sorry that the town of Irmo did that to her. I really am. And I also want to mention as well about the Carlisle property here. Why did y'all have a second meeting, kind of secretive, to push it through on second? So then today you could put it through on third. Well, because the contractor wanted to get started and get built. But you talk about access there? Well, what about when the low-income housing comes up the street a half a mile? What's it going to look like then, Mr. Walker, right? And you know what? I just retired from DHEC after 25 years of service in the soil division, Mr. Walker, and I'm going to make a few calls tomorrow and tell them to be expecting a call from the town of Irmo to come check some dry cleaning soil. So then your concern did not go unheard, because I heard what you were saying. And you guys took your cue from Hardy like you always do. You deliberately said no. Why would you not want our environment to be safe and clean? Why would you be against a traffic study? But again, as it's been this whole administration, you four take your cue from him, and everybody knows it. So I'm just glad. I wish November 5th was here. And don't stare at me either.
Anyone else? And the last thing on our agenda is an executive session.
Oh, we got another speaker.
Oh.
Good evening. I just want to.
Who are you?
Dan Newbanks. You need my address?
No.
All right. So I just want to address. We've been sitting there for 3 hours, and we covered a multitude of issues, and not once, I don't think I heard anybody really stand on any principle. I mean, the whole conversation around every issue was about, what was most popular in town. And my biggest concern with this town council and any town council or state representative or national representative is the fact that you're not here to referee mob rule. You're here to understand what's right and what's wrong. And if you're gonna legislate based on principle. Understand the philosophies behind these principles that you're legislating about. Understand the arguments, the historical basis for these arguments, and stop trying to just lick your finger and put it to the wind and see what's going to fly and what's not. That's ridiculous. This council's a joke. And for 3 hours we have sat here and not one of you has brought up any kind of moral principle or principle of right justice. It's what's going to fly, what's most popular, what do the people want. Your job isn't to figure out what the majority wants. Your job is to figure out what's right and what's wrong. And it's unbelievable to me that government has come to this point. And I hear, Hardy King, you've constantly made references to what other towns want and what other towns are doing, what other places in the state, what other places in the country, what laws are they passing. We echo laws that are passed at the state level and try to replicate them on our town ordinances. That's not what our job is. That's not what the towns should. You should be passing ordinances that protect individual rights, that protect property values, or not values, but the value of right and wrong. Property rights, respecting each other in the neighborhoods, keeping people safe. To just sit here and try to figure out how to get reelected by passing what's most popular, that's not what town council's for. I don't even know what else to say other than I'm just disgusted with the whole thing. I've sat here for almost 3 years and listened to so much. What do the people want? Well, your job is to protect the minority from the majority. Your job is not to figure out who we can outsource violence to and who we can hold a gun to whose head to get what we want. We talk about protecting property values. It's not your job to protect property values. That's not your job. Property values is an indicator of economic situations that have laws of its own. You can't just will economic principles into being. It just disgusts me. It really does. I'm running for town council, but there's a big part of me that I don't want the job. I really don't, because I don't want to be up there with you guys that just don't seem to understand even what your job is. I'm up here begging you and pleading you, whether I'm elected or not, start thinking about the principles and why you're passing the laws that you're passing, and stop passing laws because you think the majority wants what you want. Stop passing laws because you want RVs off your property or away from your property. Stop passing laws because you think you invested in property and you want that value protected. That's not legislation, that's corruption. That's greed. It's cronyism. Get educated on Bastiat's the law. Get educated on economic principles that speak to freedom, that speak to the principles. You have people in Hong Kong waving flags and chanting American, mottos and slogans and wanting the freedom that we allegedly have. And what I'm seeing is these people are more free than we are, because we've got people on town councils and state level legislators that are just pissing away our freedoms. If we want freedom, if we want to be great again, talk about make America great. If we want that to be our slogan, if we want to make America great again, if that's what we really want, then start legislating with principles of freedom in mind instead of greed. That's all. Have a nice night.
Thank you. And next is executive session. We do have one little thing I think we need to talk about. I know it's late, but I would like to have council aware of something so we can kind of go from there. But we can vote against it if you want to. There is a item, executive session. Is there a motion to go into an executive session?
Is there any way we can put it on the next agenda?
Well, I think there's something we need to talk so that.
I make a motion.
And I'll second. All in favor of going into executive session to discuss a town code enforcement option, do so with show of hands. Okay, so all opposed? Okay. Where am I at?
You were opposed?
Let me make a note here before I forget. All right, we're going in executive session. Make sure we turn our microphones off.
take him down, it would take a minute. It would take probably a few minutes. Right now, no. As iced up as he is, no.
We are back from executive session and no votes were taken. Next item is adjournment. Wow. We're check. All in favor of adjournment? Aye. We're adjourned. Thank you.